look, you gave this as an example of, okay, this is a very clear example in which being attracted to this person,
No, no,
who
no.
is not
Sorry, no. I see the confusion. No. So I didn't. So as framed as authorities, yes. So what I'm suspecting is if the concern was authorities, I think it would be. I suspect it would be. Now it could be wrong. It could be that's just a weighty thing in a semi-authority sort of way. So I'm already acknowledging that. But what I'm suspecting is that in the authority sense, this would be just all the way in the extreme case. It's just someone may be not be sure because of another concern that there may be certain necessary and sufficient conditions to meet this definition that they may want to adopt.
Clear this up in this like very simple way. Do you think the case that you gave in which someone is like a actual woman in every way except they transitioned, do you think that's a clear case in which if someone liked that person, they would clearly be heterosexual under the common usage of heterosexual?
No, I'm not making that claim.
Okay, so then I don't think you're really responding to Quick's point. Give me an example.
Wait, I don't know. Wait, what's Quick's? Wait, what do you think Quick's point was?
Quick asked you for a clear example in which someone would be heterosexual.
What do you think clear would be then? Wait. No. Hold on. We're told now there is an equivocation happening because when we say clear, I'm talking about in the clear sense of as it relates to the authorities concerned. I'm not making a claim that it's a clear case to the average person that this is a heterosexual because it could be a not.
Wait, clear. I don't even know what you mean when you say clear in the sororities case.
Okay, so we can go over. Sure.
You mean just that? Wait, I'm going to give interpretation of what I think you mean. I think you mean in the sororities case, you mean there's clear cases in which maybe something's red, clear cases in which something's not red. You mean it doesn't fall in the middle between those two things?
More specifically, I'm thinking of more to the line of what I was saying. I'm saying for the subset of individuals who are not taking on views that would take cases of this sort of single, whether it's small or large modifications, and have it not meet the criteria of heterosexuality by some necessary and sufficient criteria that they may adopt. For that subset, I suspect that subset of individuals would view it as a clear-cut case of heterosexual. So what I'm saying, yeah.
Clarify again? Repeat which subset exactly you think that would be
the
clear.
Subset. Yeah. So the subset of So by extension, I'll try to convey this by extension. So let's say, for example, someone says, "Well, I just have a view that, or I'm entertaining a view that on my view of heterosexual, one who is a biological male for some reason does not meet the necessary condition for heterosexual if they're attracted to a biological male in any sense. So even if they look exactly like a woman in every other way, and if they look exactly like a female in every other way, there's just a necessary condition that one not be attracted to a biological male. Now those sorts of individuals, they will answer that question as no, they're not a heterosexual. But they're not answering that question as no, they're not a heterosexual because of authority's concern. They just have a necessary condition for someone to be heterosexual. It's not being met. And so what I'm saying is for those sorts of individuals who are doing this for a different reason, for non-sororities concerns, who would not consider them individuals, I'm excluding that from the subset. I'm saying for the subset that are in a vague territory for sororities concerns, and not for some necessary or sufficient criteria as it pertains to some definition of heterosexual, I am saying as a suspicion, I suspect most people would view it as a clear case that it is heterosexual. That's my suspicion.
Oh, okay. So first thing is, if someone is to take the definition you gave, I don't think
I gave a definition.
Maybe not a definition, but there's a requirement already, and the requirement is you only like biological males who are born that way if you're heterosexual. If that's a requirement,
like biological male will only like biological.
yes. If that's a requirement to being heterosexual,
Mhm.
it's just going to follow logically that in that case they wouldn't like that person. But I can't imagine that.
No, it's going to follow that they're not heterosexual if they like that person.
Yeah, they're not a heterosexual if they like that person. Okay.
Right.
So I mean, I can't imagine that was what was going on in your dispute. Because first of all,
well, I'm not suggesting that was going on in my dispute. I'm not suggesting that exact thing was going on in my dispute.
Have time to craft out my.
I just want to make sure you're but I want to make sure you're understanding what I was saying first. So let's make sure we're on the same page. When I say my empirical suspicion, do you understand what it was that I was saying?
Well, here's what I got out of your response. The first thing you were saying is it's not a sororities-like case because it's not vague whether or not under this.
Wait, let's just be clear. I said I suspect it's not a sororities. I said it could be a sororities-like case, but I suspect it's not. Is what I said. And do you know why and so that's all I said. But do you know that further thing that you asked me in terms of me presenting a clear case? Do you understand the subset?
Wait, the subset of individuals you're talking about are individuals who have as a necessary condition that
who don't have.
Wait,
so
no, you said under the notion of heterosexual that biological males like people who aren't biological males. Right,
yes, I'm excluding those people from the subset. So I'm applying my suspicion to the subset that don't do that. So I'm saying, because the reason is, the whole point is that individuals may not consider that a clear case of heterosexuality for non-sororities reasons. So for reasons such as it doesn't meet this necessary or sufficient criteria, no matter where it is on the spectrum, I'm excluding the group of people who have that sort of view, and I'm saying for the subset of people who don't. I suspect the subset of people who don't have that view will see it as a clear example of heterosexual. That's my suspicion.
Okay, so you're saying...
Okay, yep, recapitulate it.
You're saying that people who don't believe that heterosexual it's a necessary condition to be heterosexual is a biological male liking another biological.
Or similar necessary or sufficient criteria that would just definitionally exclude that sort of scenario I was giving.
Right, okay, but that's...
Right, but do you understand why I'm excluding that?
Yeah, I understand why you're excluding that.
Why am I excluding that?
Well, you're excluding that because it's going to follow definitionally. They don't like these people.
Right, and why? And so why would I want to exclude those people who would follow definitionally?
It's no longer a vague case. I mean, it's just
because it's not because more aptly, yes, it is not. Well, it's not to put it more precisely. It doesn't matter whether they would them seeing it as not a vague case doesn't matter to the point I'm getting at. If I'm trying to assess whether it's a sorority's concern or not, I wouldn't want to take them finding it as not a vague case is not that informative to me, because they're not doing it for sorority's concerns in the first place.
Wait,
there's a little confusion here, because that's not, you gave me the case first, then I brought up the Sorites paradox, right?
Right. So I'm exactly, and then the reason I have so you're saying it's out of a sorority.
Shut the fuck up, Bobby.
All right, whoever just mods, if whoever's doing that, just banned from the server. You brought up a sorority's concern, which is why I gave that suspicion. I said, okay, well, I suspect it might be something other than a sorority's concern. And me suggesting this would be a clear case is only in terms of people who would view.
But then that doesn't explain the reason you brought up the case in the first place.
Exactly.
I originally asked you for a clear example.
The reason I brought up the case in the first place is very simple. I just wanted to test it out. I wanted to present him with an example of what I would see as.
Wait, no. just let me speak. I haven't got time to like flesh out my view. There was a demand from Quick. Demand from Quick is give me an example of someone who does not fit the biological woman category, and you would still be straight or heterosexual if you're attracted to this person. And you gave that.
That is, oh well, that is oh sure, well that's a demand that was easily met. If you're asking in terms of my view, like in terms of my view, yes.
In terms of your view, it's in terms of the common usage of the word.
Oh, in terms of the in terms of the common usage of the word, first of all, that wasn't clarified or dialed in. So just to be clear, let's walk back that claim. That's not the demand that Quick was giving. That's something you may interpret, but that was not explicitly stated. So
yes, it was explicitly stated. I disagree. That was explicitly
find
stated.
a timestamp then.
Okay, we can do that.
No. If what, just to be clear, let's get the strong claim on the table then. If you're going to hold me to it, if you're going to double down on it. Wait, are you doubling down on that? So just to be clear, you're doubling down that you said when you asked me for a clear case, you said that the common individual would find as heterosexual.
So I will just make this because I don't know whether I said it explicitly or not. What I'll say is from the context, we were talking about common usage. And I'm pretty sure if you want, we can go through the video. I'm almost certain common usage.
Right. So, but sure. And even if you did say common usage, by the way, the whole point, so I could grant that even if it's true that, that if I'm me bringing over a case of, so let's just say for the sake of the argument, you did say common usage. And I gave you an example where I'm not actually sure if common usage would track. That's fine. I may not be sure if the common usage would track, so I may not have met that demand.
Just to be clear.
Wait 1 second. But the context of that was out of evaluating if it was a sorority's concern.
No. The sorority's concern was afterwards. Wait. Maya was giving the argument. So the whole argument I was trying to give from the whole point I was trying to make from the beginning of that point was that I was trying to give a case where I believe that the common usage is causing ambiguity. Right. That was my whole argument from the beginning. Right. That's my whole shtick. So that's why I asked. That's why I was going to the case of dating. I said to you, well, I think dating is a case where the common usage of the term is, or at least some people, I think a good amount of people are biological, right? That was my whole argument from the beginning. So even
that's not an argument; it's a position. So it would be a position.
Okay. Well, I was going to give an argument. Well, it's going to be a premise of an argument. Sure, however you want to phrase it.
I know it wasn't clearly what I'm not clear on any of the points were to be honest. It seems like you're just waffling all. It seems like getting a clear point between either of you. By the way, is like trying to hold. Really have to keep it together to keep things linear and just to get anything out, which is fine. I can do that. I'm pretty good at doing that, so I will.
Fine.
But it wasn't clear. But let's just say it was clear. So, it's fine. I'm trying to get clarity. So
you said for the times. I mean, like I said, just to be clear, you're the one who made a big deal about timestamp and stuff, right? So I want to ask.
We need Quick to get near his microphone. It's really frustrating for everyone listening because we can't make out what you're saying well. So just try to stay close to the mic.
I didn't. That's not what I asked. So I'll repeat the question. Please answer it. Do you think there's a point of contention in the first comment that you made? We can get to additional concerns.
I think the point of contention I want to bring
In
up
the
is
first comment that you made. I didn't ask that either. So
follow
okay,
from
we're
the
gonna
first-
we're gonna try. So we're gonna try 3 times. If you answer the question, if you're willing to answer the question that's being asked, because this is, I'll tell you this much. This is irritating. If you're willing to answer the question being asked, we can get to other points of contention, but I'm going in order. So the first order is point 1 that you made in the comment, right? So I'm going to ask it, and I want your answer to be indexed to that. Do you still think there's a point of contention with the clarity I've provided? Do you still think there's a point of contention with respect?
Let's get it clear. You can make claims. You can just talk over me. I don't get a chance to respond and flesh out what I mean.
If your response doesn't answer the question, then no, you won't. So let's try a second try.
You get to make random statements. I don't get to respond to them.
Do you still? Nope, you don't. No, you do. That's not how this works.
You should note, Julian, that it's literally not worth talking. I don't know if it's just on my end, but when they both talk at the same time, I'm only really hearing much of Avi. I don't know if others can confirm that in chat, but likely just wasting your own time by talking over him.
Yeah, look,
it's certainly how it sounds on the recording, at least, and on my end. Yeah, others are saying the same. Avi's the only one who comes through. Yeah,
I only have a
here,
really bad laptop. I don't have anything better. So
also, it helps when you just answer the question that's being asked, and not some other question or trying to skip to something else that you want to get to, that you think you can crawl your way back when you're being pressed against the point you don't feel like you can defend. So how about you just answer the first thing and we'll get to the next thing? Do you still think there's a point of contention? Point number 1.
Wait, that's a ridiculous point, because you're
do you think
that's someone else talk? They're both talking. Let's move to the stage, and we can bring people up one at a time. Yeah. Am I just failing to see him? I'm trying to spot his name in there.
Yeah, he looks like a panda bear.
It was Julian, right? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I see him. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and just before we go, let's just take a minute here to just say, like, in this server and in AY, we approach discussion linearly. So you can't do the stuff where you like make one point, then if that point turns into trouble, you start like trying to make another. Like you can get to everything you want to talk about and it'll all be addressed. But you have to stop. Don't even try to talk over me. You're just gonna get instantly annihilated if you even try that. Okay, I'm speaking. So it's gonna be linear. It's gonna be point by point. You need to just calm down. Wait a second, stop over talking. Don't try to over talk. It's irritating, it's needless. If Quick wants to talk, he can come up after. And yeah, the reason for that is that it just muddies the waters, right? There's a lot of people who can't really defend what they're saying. They come in really hot, and when they get pressed, they don't really know how to respond, so they waffle over to other stuff, and then when you say, hey, we're not doing that, they start trying to make it into a fight for who can talk and who can do this. And then they try to say, oh, I was unfairly banned and kicked. And, we're just not going to put up with any of that. We can go through every point you have one by one, but it will be linear. And I will have my hand on the mute button right now. So if you overtalk Avi, you're just going to get muted. So yeah, keep it point by point. And I'll unmute.
The question was very simple. You still think there's a point of contention with respect to point 1? Seems like the main point there was that you thought I was making an empirical claim about how the general population, including those who have considerations about necessary and sufficient criteria, non-sorties considerations, would clearly see women. Do you still think I'm making that point? And do you still think there's a point of contention with respect to the first point in your comment?
Yeah, so if what you're saying is true, I don't think you're addressing Quick's point at all. So I think you performed horribly.
That's not an answer to the question. So,
No,
do you still think that there's a point? So let's try to answer the question. Well, we'll get to the little quip you made. See, notice the little quip there. Instead of answering the question, what Julian just did is Julian said not an answer to the question, but tried to do a little quip. Well, if
you performed terribly.
if you were the term what? Yeah, so it was a quip. It was a little chirp. It's like, oh well.
I think a good way to respond to this would be every time he deviates from linearity, you and I can just mute him and just talk about the meta of how he's doing that, why it's silly, and then you can like re-ask the question after we're done making fun of the attempted evasion.
It's like instead of saying no, you didn't make that point.
Clearly, sorry, my internet is fucked right now.
You're coming through clear to me. Yeah. So instead of actually answering the question, what Julian just did was he jumped to well, if I was wrong about what you were saying, then you just didn't address someone else's point. Well, we'll get to that, sweetheart. Don't worry. And that's because that's also that's not going to go in the way you like it. But we're going to before we get to that, my darling, we are going to actually see if you can answer the question.
Well,
so let's try again.
And notice the psychology also of the thing being asked about. He probably isn't sure he can defend, so he's trying to go. Well, however that works out, here's this other problem. You fucked up in this way. It's really just an attempt to not acknowledge error and then redirect everything at you and keep your feet on the fire. But that's not fair, right? So that's just gonna get muted and re-asked.
So what? Let's try to answer the question now. Do you think there's still a point of contention with point one you made?
Firstly, if that's what you were saying, I don't think it is what you were saying.
So was that an answer to the question, everyone? I said, given that clarity, so I already dialed in the if that's what I was saying, right? Because notice how I said, given that the clarification, so that part that Julian just added right now, that stipulative answer, was already added. So that's actually not answering the question. So let's try again.
Yeah, should we do the countdown? Because he might just keep evading endlessly. Do you want to do like 10 tries or something like that?
I think 10 is. I think you're pretty generous with 10, but sure, if you want 10, it's fine.
Okay, we'll keep a little tally of dodges. So, and hedging and trying to throw in garbage and whatnot before answering that also is just gonna get a little tick on the tally board. Got to operate in good faith.
You think there's still a point of contention with that clarification on number one?
No contention. You didn't respond to Quick's argument.
Okay, so that's going to be one. And since he's obviously not listening, I say we decrease from 10 to 3.
That's fine.
Okay.
So do you think there's a point of contention with respect to number one? That is to say that what you said, I did not in fact say, or interpreted me to say, I did not in fact say. Or interpreted me to claim I did not in fact claim.
Yeah, so he ran away, and that's just what people will do, because the thing is, a lot of these people want to do sophistry, and the way to shut that down, I mean, obviously they'll have their ball lickers who are going to go, oh, you muted them unfairly, you blah, 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 but it's perfectly obvious that they can have a discussion, they can raise every point they want, we can go through them, they'll be allowed to speak, they're just not allowed to ramble off point and try to do posturing and bullshit. I saw Quick raised his hand. Do you want to talk to Quick?
Oh, sure, I can talk to Quick if he wants. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I felt he was very reasonable the other day, so, I mean, hopefully we'll see a continuation of that and not some crazy shit like what that other guy just did.
Kind of like a watered down, yeah, it's like kind of a watered down version of Julian in terms of like the reaching for the cheap dunk straw.
Well,
so
I don't think he did a lot of that
more
with
tolerable.
You, did he?
No, I mean that in the good way, by the way. It's like it's more tolerable. It's not as bad with him.
Yeah, my only really, I don't think he was doing much of that with you, at least not that I remember. I do think
he wasn't. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. One sec. I'll bring him up.
Yo, what's up?
Yo, what's up?
Can we get to point 2?
Yo, you need to. I'm sorry. This is like going to be always when you're up here. You're like 10% of Avi's volume.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes,
I
thank
said,
you.
Yeah.
can we,
What's up? There you go. What's up, quick?
let's just go to his
All right.
second point, because I think I'm more interested
Sure.
in that one.
Oh, second. Yeah. So no problem. By the way, just to be clear, do you think there's a residual point of contention with point 1 because we're going in order?
I honestly don't really understand.
If you want to say you don't understand what he said, that's fine. You don't understand the point 1 that he said?
I got a little lost in the middle of the conversation. So
Okay. All right. I don't blame you for not understanding what he said. It's okay. All right. So point 2. Yeah. Point 2, there's not really, I don't think there's any contention either. Except I don't think I used the word underdetermined sloppily, or maybe I did, depending on who it's indexed to. So it says, sure, you can explain a case under both definitions, but it certainly would not mean the case is underdetermined. Well, if I'm using the word sloppily, how do you know it's not underdetermined? Anyway, even if the theories account for the data, one might do so better. That's never contested by me. Of course, one might account for the data better. That's why presenting the data was important, which I don't think anyone presented data, or virtue or theoretical virtues about one over the other. For example, gender reveal party. I agree the social biological accounts can explain when someone reports the baby as a boy, but one account does it better. Avi relies on future predictions. I don't know what it means, rely on future predictions. I don't think I even took a view on the matter. Expressions that the boy would fit under a certain model when they grew up. That was provided as an example, not my position. But anyway, I'm trying to illustrate the concept. But under this semantic, it seems like that would be false if the baby came close to transition. Yeah, there could be evidence against it, or there could be observations that make it that indicate that someone was incorrect. I don't think that makes the theory incorrect. Someone could just be incorrect. Or furthermore, that seems to be present in the tense of the future sense with company. Okay, look, if the point is that one can bring forth certain theoretic virtues or data to resolve underdeterminations, I'm not going to disagree with that. I agree with that. In fact, that's what is tasked to do in a situation like this. What you want to do is exactly that. Try to bring forth reasons to resolve underdeterminations in one way or another. And all I was saying is it wasn't clear how what was being drawn upon does that. That is to say, how that observation of coextension or causality is more expected of an observation on one hypothesis compared to the other hypothesis in question. Now, you can resolve that. You can respond to that by bringing forth some case to make about how that observation is more expected on one hypothesis than the other. And that's, in fact, what your task could do. And that would resolve the underdetermination. Nothing I said in the conversation suggests that resolving underdeterminations need be like analytic or need be like some deduction. You can do it empirically, sure. I just don't think that really has been done. Or you can make some argument of theoretical virtues. I don't think that's been done either in that conversation.
Okay, you said a lot, so I'm gonna try to go slowly. Do you believe that you made this claim? So, are you making the claim? That the gender reveal case, both concepts are like underdetermined, right? It doesn't pick out either which one over the other. Is that your view?
If by the gender reveal case we are talking about within the confines of the two interlocutors I was discussing about, I don't think anyone has resolved the underdetermination between those two people. If you're asking me some other question of like, do I have a view that it's underdetermined on my view? I haven't made any of those claims.
Okay. You used the word underdetermination. I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand exactly what you might mean by it. So, because there are two ways I can understand what you're saying. One is just both hypotheses equally explain the data, and then the other one would be both hypotheses explains the data, but right. So it doesn't like falsify either hypothesis, but does not make the claim that they're like equal, right? So which one are you saying?
Yeah, something closer to the former, at least with respect to what was being discussed. So I'm talking. So to answer the question, it's something closer to the former. I don't think it has to be exactly 50-50. Like if one hypothesis is 49 and the other one is 51. You know, it's close enough for me to, like, in casual sense, just say, okay, it's underdetermined.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah. So, but just to be clear, that's not a further claim that I'm making about the world. That's just the claim that I'm making in that conversation. Like, in that conversation, I don't think you brought anything to bear that would, if I start from the principle of, so what I'm saying is, if I start from the principle of difference, I don't think you in that conversation brought anything to bear to resolve the underdetermination in your favor, and I don't think she brought anything to bear that would resolve the underdetermination in her favor. That's
Right.
what I mean. And that's the way I was using the term.
Great. And so I disagree with that. So I do disagree with that. I think that's cannot be right on this case. I'll have to see
What do you disagree with specifically?
that in this case, that this case is underdetermined in the way that you're making it out to be. I don't think it's underdetermined.
What is the way I'm making it out to be?
Well, you just defined it. I thought we just agreed.
Wait, I just want to make sure you understand it.
Okay. You just said that it's something like both hypotheses basically equally explain the data, rightfully, right?
No, so you didn't follow. Okay, so that's why I asked you, even though I just explained it. All right, so what I mean is, underdetermined is in I start from the principle of indifference, which is assigning equal probability to the various. So I start from the principle of difference. So starting from the principle of difference, I'm asking myself, do either of these interlocutors who have a different hypothesis they're advocating for, have they provided anything to bear to resolve the underdetermination from the principle of indifference? That is just tabula rasa. I'm just starting from scratch. I don't know which hypothesis. I have equal priors on both. Have either of these interlocutors given me any reason to shift one way or the other? And that's what I mean. And that's what I mean by if I say something, you've brought something up, and I say it's underdetermined. Like, I don't think it's given me one way or the other. Okay.
I swear I just said that. It's okay. We can just.
You absolutely nope. You did not, and I'm glad it's being recorded because you did because you didn't.
I agree. I agree. It's recorded. So let's just look. I just want to move past this because I think we actually both agree. So I just want to make my point because I'm disagreeing with that claim. All right. You brought
what
up.
Is? Oh, I'm going to make sure you understand the claim.
Okay,
what's the claim?
May I speak? Okay. Now you bring a principle of difference to me. I'm just talking about the posterior, if you want to put it that way, right? I'm just saying after the data is presented, the probabilities are roughly equal. That's what I was just saying. I'm
saying after the data that was presented in that debate.
Yes. I understand what you're saying.
Yes,
I understand.
Yes, because I don't think much of any data at all was presented in that debate.
That's fine. That is totally fine. That's totally fine. I understand what you're saying. You insist on bringing a principle of difference. It's okay. I think we just talk past each other. It's okay. I understand what you're saying.
What claim am I making?
You're saying that if we had the principle of indifference, so I roughly assign 50-50 beforehand, right, to both hypotheses.
Mm-hmm.
The case I brought, right, what we conditionalize on that, the posterior should be roughly still the same, basically, right? It shouldn't move you one way or the other.
It's not clear that more aptly it doesn't resolve the underdetermination.
Yes,
or at least it's not clear that it does resolve the underdetermination. At least to me.
You just won't accept my answers. Okay, fine. Yeah. So
no, sometimes I provide a wait, stop. No, we're not going to do the quips. So sometimes I might mostly accept it, but provide additional little clarification to tidy it up.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, it's okay. Please, I just want to. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm disagreeing with that claim. Okay, I am disagreeing with that claim.
Okay.
Good. Great. So now we agree.
Do you think it's false? Do you think it's false that starting from? Okay.
Yes, I think that
case
I provided. Which should give you evidence for my hypothesis over your hypothesis. As long as we also
not my hypothesis. Sorry, it's not my hypothesis.
Sorry. Anne's hypothesis. Sorry, I apologize. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I do believe that case I gave should do
I know you do.
Okay,
I know you do.
So let's discuss it. So let's discuss it. Right, great. So I don't think your objection works. Right, the one you gave in the video. Okay, good.
What was the objection?
The best I can understand, and this is, of course, I mean, I don't want to break down the video but you were saying something like, how about this? I don't want to speculate. You just tell me, and then maybe we don't disagree. What is the semantics that you think will make the sentence it is a boy true, right, under her view?
Sure. So it is the semantics of it is a boy on her view. Her view would it depends. I think her view suggested that it would be in some context biological, some context societal. So it could be any of those things. It could be like, oh, it will grow up to be an adult human female. It'll grow up to be an adult human male. It would grow up to be fulfilling the role of a individual that acts like a female in society. That could make it true. It could be it will grow up to fulfill the role of someone who acts like a male in society. It will play with, it will wear skirts. It will wear, I mean, I could keep going on with examples, but
Thank you. And exactly in the video, you said something about the future. Basically, you're saying, so this is my argument would be that case you're bringing up, given our background knowledge of how English grammar works, is very low. It's very unlikely. So because in English, nouns don't have tenses, right? So exactly what you said was the sentence you translated the sentence, it is a boy, to the sentence, it will wear a dress or something like that. But that is
no. I didn't translate it to that. I said what would make it true. Wait. I said what? Wait. Hold on. Oh, you're asking me what would make her hypothesis true?
If it's underdetermined, right? You agree that you have to take this quotation mark. I could put it like this: quotation mark. It is a boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to give a plausible semantic. So let's write like a biconditional, right? Take the sentence. It is a boy, if and only if the quotation mark is a boy. So and then on the right hand side, give what you would say without the quotation mark. So you're giving the actual semantic content. What would that be to make the sentence come out true, right? Do you get what I'm saying? Right, extensionally, right? That's what we want, right?
Wait. If someone says it is a boy, they could have a concept that is not captured, that they may not have a necessary sufficient conditions. That if and only if they could have. So, for example, it could be like a concept of a chair. I don't know why you think.
Okay, I'm just trying to give I only bring up the biconditional. You don't have to hold so strictly to it. I'm just trying to make a delineation to understand the argument I'm trying to make. Because, right, there is the strings, it is a boy, right? Right. To make the case that it's underdetermined, you have to give up something, a definition. It doesn't have to be necessarily sufficient.
Oh, no, I don't think you have to make a definition, but okay.
It doesn't have to be a definition. Okay. You have to give me something about the concept, right? Some working definition. I'm not saying it has to be necessarily sufficient, right? I hope you understand what I mean when I say that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Such that will, right, under the social view, such that it will make this.
Under the social view, not under Anne's view. Okay, fine. Yes.
No, sorry. Anne's view. I made my mistake. If I spoke.
Well, Anne's view is not just. It wasn't purely the social view. Anne's view was that it's something. Some context is the social view, in some context it's biological view.
Okay, so if I can go to the video, since we want to timestamp in the video.
At least that's what I understood her to say. I'm pretty sure she did say that.
Yeah. So you want me? You want me to timestamp in the video where you explicitly make the future argument. So you're not.
No. Wait. When I make a future argument, what are you saying? I said.
Yeah. We should just play it.
Wait. What do you think when I gave an example of a future as an ostension? I gave that as an example. What do you mean by a future argument?
Your point was, sorry. Let me be clear. Yeah. Were you in the video around 4 minutes? I can look for it if you want. You specifically make this point that it's underdetermined, and then you say because explicitly, because you say that the term can mean something like what you were just saying, that it will in the future, right, be a boy or something, right, in a social sense. Basically you're trying to understand the
I'm saying that's what someone may mean. I'm just giving that as one example.
Yeah, but that example,
I'm not saying that's the reason it's underdetermined. It's just an example.
No, that is.
Wait, do you think that's? Wait, hold on. You thought, it's underdetermined because in the future someone might. Wait.
What is your argument?
I'm just providing an example of two different potential. Look, we can keep going on with underdeterminations. If you want, I can keep providing examples of what someone could mean when they say it's a boy. That was just an example that was brought to bear in the moment, just as an ostension. I could keep going if you'd like. I don't think that I'm not making a claim that that's the main reason why it's underdetermined. I was just trying to provide a further analysis of why coextension doesn't do a good job of resolving underdeterminations or causal being able to causally predict or drawing if one accepts determinism, showing that something is fully causally determined isn't a good way of resolving that underdetermination of what someone means. It wasn't a claim that the reason it's underdetermined about what people mean is because it could be this. Like, what?
Okay, I don't know what you're saying. Just okay.
I agree with that. You don't know what I'm saying. So what are you saying that I'm claiming? Saying that I'm
okay, yeah. I asked you right now. I even asked you right now. So okay, just right now, you claimed it's underdetermined. I'm asking you.
Okay, and you know what I mean by that? Yes.
Okay, we've been over this. I'm asking you how is it underdetermined? Give me the semantics under which her view would make it be underdetermined on her view. It seems like now you're my issue is this, now you're trying to say her view includes biological stuff.
That's what I took it to be. Yes.
In the video, you never said that, and that's where we're gonna have a disagreement.
Wait. In the video, I take it to be that she said that, but in the video that I went over with her, I was providing just the contrast of two more clearly contrasting views, which were a social view versus a biological view. I don't take her view to be a purely social view. I took it to be some sort of, in some contexts it's biologic, some contexts it's social. But for the sake of providing an example, in the video I did, I just presented two different contrasting hypotheses. One was a social one and one was a biologic one. That's not a claim that the social one was Anne's view. That's just me giving an example of two different hypotheses and how they could be underdetermined. And how certain things may not resolve the underdetermination. That's all.
Yeah. I think the only way we can make progress, you got to just watch the video, because the way you're representing the video, and I watched it like two times just to be extra sure because I was misrepresenting you, is not at all how I'll be charitable and say my impression of what you said. So, okay, because in the context, you're saying something about how my case not a good case, and then you never said what you're saying, which is it's underdetermined because of the fact that she includes the biological view. Rather, you said it's underdetermined, and then the only case you brought up is the case where you said the semantics can be future tense. And obviously, I just gave the argument why, given English grammar, that doesn't make sense. That's not how nouns work. That's not how tenses work. So because they say it is a boy. So if I say it is a boy, that is very unlikely that will mean it will be, right? It's talking about the present tense, right? So that's just how I'm going to leave it at that. And it seems like the only way we can go through this is go through the video line by line. I'm not really interested in doing that. I would encourage everyone. It's like 4 minutes in. 4 minutes in.
So okay. So you can. You could. I encourage you to. If you think I said something, I encourage you to spell it out clearly and to come back with whatever timestamps you want if you want to make a point. But again, I just was very clear on what I said. It wasn't. I wasn't saying that was the only reason. This was given as an example. And also the fact that you're using the word is as a present tense to suggest that when someone says it is a boy, they're not thinking about the social roles, or the thing that they're trying to mean is not the social roles, or they're not envisioning that boy or that future child playing with their toys that boys typically play with and whatnot. I don't take that to be a good case. That's something I would like to resolve empirically, not with some armchair analysis of someone making the argument of, well, it's present tense, so how can it be that if it's future? Like, that's the level of argument we're getting at to resolve the underdetermination? Are you kidding me? That's what you're coming to me with?
Yeah, I'm coming.
People say it is. No.
I mean, it's fine.
Oh my gosh, you are engaged.
This is rhetorical.
I'm not thinking about you will be married. Like, that's not the sort of thing I mean. Like, okay, since in many contexts people do mean that. Like, okay, yes, people talk about things that are is when they mean when they have certain future meanings in mind all the time. What are you talking about?
What being engaged? Okay, it can be a consequence of being engaged that you'll have
yes.
It's not that
it's a vague. Right, I think there's a sort of vague idea. Yeah, I think there's a sort of vague idea that people have when they use these words. You can say no all you want.
Wait, you're the one mocking, right? So it's funny. Just
doing rhetorical. You can say, look, you can say again. You could say, I'm just pointing out that I'm not. Look, if your point is that when someone says it is a boy, if the point here is that, well, it's not, they're not referring to any sort of future social role in any way or any meaningful way that is their sense of the term, or that is one of their senses of the term, because they use the word is and they did not use the word will be, I'm sorry, I don't find that convincing. I think people use terms like is when they have things of future tense in mind, conceptually, plenty of time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine. I mean, I don't agree. Your example.
And if you want to resolve that empirically, I'm happy to do so. If you have data to bring me off that, I'm happy to do so.
There's other issues. It's not just as simple as that, too.
I mean,
right?
I didn't say okay. So wait. So we'll go issue by issue. So do you have empirical? Do you have some empirical data to bear to resolve that standstill right now?
The only data I have is just English grammar, but we can.
Oh, that's not data you have is English grammar. Sorry, so you have like a study on English grammar and how it relates to the concepts people have in their mind when they use is versus will, such to suggest that they very rarely do that. Is that what you have?
Okay, so just to be clear, what would you count as empirical data? So if I cite you,
yeah, I'm asking something like what I'm asking would ask for is something like a study when they would either survey or poll people and try to control for various factors of the types of questions being asked to bias in one way or the other, to try to answer the question that you are proposing, which is when people use the word is and followed by a noun, do they really not have any sort of future considerations in mind when they refer to that noun with the word is? Now, if you can provide some analysis of that with such as some sort of survey or something along those lines, I'd be happy to see it. Do you have something?
No, I don't have a survey. I could just give you like.
Do you have any other sort of empirical data that's such as a study?
It just depends. Would you count linguistics research? That's what I'm asking you. Like, what's that? Would you count that as data or not?
If it's when you say linguistics research, do you mean some conceptual armchair analysis in linguistics, or do you mean some sort of quantitative data?
Okay.
So is it quantitative? Let's just start there.
Probably not.
Okay. Is it? Well, you're asking me a question. You said, would you consider data? I consider data and observation to be more compatible with one hypothesis than the other.
I could just explain what the data, and you could just tell me if you accept it or not.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously, think of how linguistics does any kind of like. Imagine if you're a linguist and you go and you study the grammar of a foreign language, right? I mean, it's going to be observational data, right? It's not going to be the kind of quantitative data you're talking about where they count, and it's not how they do it.
That's not true. There is quantitative data in linguistics. I don't know why you just made that claim, but okay.
Okay, even if I'm not, you claim that that's the only kind, or the kind of.
No, I didn't say that's the only kind. I asked you what kind you have. You can have qualitative data. It's weaker. It's generally weaker in my experience, much weaker than quantitative data. All else considered equal, but you can have it. So, what is the data? Let's start. Do you have data?
I'm just want to be clear. If I cite you like a grammar book, right, would that count as data to you? That's all I'm just trying to get clear. Yes or no?
No, because it's not an observation. It's not clear to me that would be an observation more compatible on the hypothesis you're trying to put forth than its negation. Because it's already the point of contention that just because the word is being used, that they don't have any sort of meaningful future considerations of the noun in mind.
I'm sorry. I'm lost. Wait. I'm just saying. Wait. What about the point is the book. However they get it. I don't know how the
grammar book. So if your question is if I cite you a grammar book
by linguists, right? Presumably they don't just make it up. So I don't know their methods, right? So that's the claim. So I'm not. Here's the point where I'm just saying I don't know their methods.
So just to be clear,
how they acquire the data. So that's what I'm trying to ask you.
Just to be clear, so if you cite me a grammar book and the grammar book says that the word, when someone uses the word is, regardless of its structure in the English language denoting present tense, they don't have any meaningful, the noun, when someone utters that followed by a noun, they don't have conceptual future considerations of the noun. So that's what the grammar book will say.
Yeah, my claim is the grammar book would say, my claim is the grammar book would say that nouns don't have tenses, only...
I didn't ask, that's not what I asked.
Okay, well, that's my argument. That's my argument.
That's not, wait. But then I wouldn't consider that. Wait, hold on. You're saying that you're going to cite me a grammar book.
Yes.
And the grammar book is going to say what?
That nouns do not have tenses, right? So if I say ball, cat, hair, that doesn't tell you when it will occur, right? So
I agree. Yeah, I agree that in the English language, So
So
sure,
it is,
but that would not be evidence to answer this type of question because
but wait, because
Yeah.
wait, I'm sorry. If the noun itself doesn't tell you when
Hmm?
the noun, right? In the case of the verb, in the case of the to be predicate, it's going to be the copula, right? Right. Um, right. If it doesn't tell you when that is applied to the subject, right? Right. If that's my claim is the noun. Just if you just say noun, it doesn't tell you when that noun is going to be applied to the subject. You have to look at the verb.
Yeah,
to
as a
know-
matter of grammar, that could be the case, but that's not
Yeah.
going to be evidence. But that's not going to be evidence for the question we have. It's not going to resolve anything for me either way,
Okay.
because that's
So-
a very different question. Is again, that's not the question I'm trying to resolve. The question I'm trying to resolve is when someone uses that term. When someone uses that term, do they have considerations in their conception of that noun that are future?
Right. And my argument is
Hmm?
if you agree that this grammar, is tracking, right, common English usage very closely, right? Then that would be empirical data that the word, right, that when you have the is and then the noun that applies to the present. So even your example of engagement. So the point is,
Just to be clear, what the argument is here. So the argument is if by our rules of grammar, the noun doesn't tell us anything about tense,
yes,
then therefore it means that when someone mentions a noun, that they don't have any meaningful conception of future relations to that noun, like what that noun will do.
I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what you mean. I genuinely have no. Let me just. Your example of engagement will clarify this. Okay. Even your example of he is engaged, right? Like
Mhm.
if you want to use, you can say it's you. What is you're saying is that the property is applied to the subject at the
Oh.
time, right? He
How
has
about
the.
you? How about you give the wait? Just how about you give the argument? And so the conclusion of the conclusion is going to be that when someone says it is a boy, when someone says it is a boy, that they don't mean anything of the sort of things that person will do in the future. That's not the sort of thing they're getting at. That's not the sort of thing that they mean in any substantial way. Because I'm not understanding how you're getting there.
Okay, my argument is that if they use the word is, what logically follows from that, and maybe you don't even disagree with this. I don't know, because now we're going maybe in a weird, because I don't know the way you're taking it is I'm not understanding it. What I'm claiming is if I say X is P, right, where P is a predicate, then it's true at the current time. Let's call it T1.
I'm writing it down right now. So
Yeah,
the conclusion, we have the conclusion.
Yeah, the conclusion would be that let's
That
call
when
T1
someone says, the conclusion is what the case you're trying to make. When someone says it is a boy,
okay, we can reasonably infer that let's call T1 the present, that at T1 X has the property P, and I don't mean property in a robust sense.
can reasonably infer. Wait, when someone says it is a boy, we can reasonably infer what?
Also, can you
Oh, yeah.
post what you're writing in general so we can all really clearly look at the
Yeah,
argument? Yeah, okay, cool. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna so I'm saying
So when someone, presumably the conclusion is the hypothesis itself that you're trying to advance. That is when someone says it is a boy, it is only referring to the biological sex as a male.
Huh? No. I'm
Oh,
saying
you're
that
not saying that.
Wait. Sorry. Let me just be clear. The conclusion of the argument is that the property of being a boy is true about the let's call it the fetus in this case at the current time, right?
Yeah, but I'm talking about a matter of what people mean when they use terms. So if you're just going to talk about some other sort of like property that's independent of that, that's a whole different discussion about whether those things are even meaningful or coherent But it's not the conversation at hand, or at least the sort of thing that I'm getting at, because I was contrasting two hypotheses. One hypothesis is about what people mean when they say something.
Okay, so
Presumably the conclusion is when someone says it as a boy, it's only referring to the biological sex (parentheses male).
yeah, so my argument
Right. So that is the conclusion. Is that the conclusion?
that would be an inference that follows from my conclusion. My conclusion, my
point
so
of process. This just we're trying to we want to be linear at this point because the conversation is sort of like waffling a lot all over the place, and it seems like things keep getting phrased slightly differently, and when that happens, it just turns into muddy waters. So like, whatever the argument is you're making, let's just go step by step before even talking about the premises. Let's clearly understand what the conclusion is and write it down, and then we'll write out the premises after that and then discuss them.
Okay, my conclusion would be that the rule I'm stating from my rules I'm stating that you can let's call T1 the present. At T1, X it's going to be true that at T1 X has property P. That's one way of putting it.
Okay, so if the position you have is at T1 X has property P.
Mm-hmm. And then the claim would be, well, if it's in the present, if he currently has this property.
Sorry, so that's not any of the hypotheses that I was contrasting.
Yeah, I know. So now I'm going to get to that. This would be.
Wait, but the conclusion is going to be. Wait, so is your goal to advance one of the hypotheses over the other, the biologic over the social?
Yes.
Okay, so presumably then the conclusion is going to be the biologic hypothesis.
Right, because the argument's going to be that
supporting it, right?
Yeah, don't you keep cascading into the argument. Just start with conclusion. Let's just get the conclusion clear and not cascade past that. We want to step by step, linear. So let's just get clear about the conclusion.
Okay, the ultimate conclusion would be yes, that this would be evidence for the biological hypothesis over the.
Okay, so it is more probable. Is that what you want to say?
Sure.
Okay, when someone says it is a boy, it is more probable. It's more probable that when someone says it is a boy, they are referring only to the biological sex of that child. Parentheses male. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So now we can get to an argument. So what's the argument for that conclusion?
Great. So the argument would be that if this pattern is true, that let's say X is the statement, if I say X is P, right, then it follows that, at T1 where T1 is equals the present, X has the property P, right? And then, then by modus ponens, right? Because I'm going to say obviously it is a boy.
Wait, so hold on. If this pattern is true, parentheses X equals P, then it follows that comma at T equals 1, comma where 1 equals the present.
Mm-hmm. At 1 equals the present, X has the property P. Okay.
X has the property P. Okay, so we have, this is where we are right now. Premise 1, conclusion. Are we going to build that?
Yeah, so obviously premise 2 is just going to be the antecedent of the conditional, and then by modus ponens, we get the conclusion, right? Good, clear?
If then, okay, one moment. Okay. So this is what we have right now. Is that correct?
Yes, and then the argument's going to be that, okay, so obviously by modus ponens, the consequent follows. Okay, so from that, now we're going to get the question. Now we're going to have to ask the question. If in the present moment, the fetus has the property.
Wait, this is, just to be clear, this is the argument, right?
Yeah. Wait.
Okay.
Yeah, but now it's going to be a little bit more informal, right? So
but I'm not. But wait, but I don't see a reason.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
give
see
more
a reason to accept premise 2, or premise 1. I'm not even sure what X and P are actually.
Okay, well,
Also,
okay, that's fine.
there's something a bit weird about what you just said. Like, quick, you have to understand we're not operating the way you're operating. Like when you're saying, okay, now it's going to get informal. Like you really want to get into this what I view and I think Avi views as very wishy-washy natural language territory. And like it's okay, a lot of the conversation can happen in natural language, but we need to at all points have a clear sense of the tree structure, basically, right? The conclusion being the tree, the premises being what supports that, and then for each premise, there might be a subtree below that, but we're going to stay on a linear path like that. At no point is it just going to descend into like crazy waffling. So it's not like, oh, here's the hurdle they're throwing at me, I have to clear that, then I can go back to waffling. Like, no, we're going to be on the tracks the whole time, right? So Avi might object to a premise and then you can support that premise, or he might want to falsify a premise. In fact, at this point, I would just let him respond. Like, does he disagree with the premise?
Actually, I actually just want to get clarity. What is X and what is P?
So those are just quantify. I mean, I could quantify. I mean, how strict do you want me?
Oh,
to
they're empty quantifiers. That could be anything
no,
that's in there?
no, obviously, I mean for all, right? I mean, again, that's what I said. How
So
technical do you
what
want me to
is X? What does
I'm
X mean?
I'm saying for all X, for all P, right, where X is a lowercase singular term, P is a predicate, the conditional is true, right? Then by universal generalization.
Wait. No, you just had an argument where it says if the pattern is true, X is P, then it follows that at T equals 1, where 1 equals the present, X has the property P. Okay, so then premise 2. Okay, so in that case, I understand. So in that case, I need an argument for premise 2.
Yeah, so premise 2 is going to be the sentence, it is a boy.
No. Premise 2 is the sentence, if the pattern is true, X is P, then it follows that, comma, at T equals 1, where 1 equals the present, X has the property P, then it is more probably what someone says.
Also, it's super weird, quick, that you just said P2 is something not even remotely like what he's written. Are you actually looking at what we're writing? Like we're trying to keep you on the rails, and you just said something totally different as P. Like that's incredibly frustrating. Look in general. No more random we're staying on the tracks. Just look at general. You can always say, actually, I want to alter the argument. We'll be fair about that. You can change it around as much as you need. But it's super fucking annoying, dude. Let's actually look at the same thing and talk about the same thing and not have P2 randomly fly into another fucking proposition because you're not even looking at the thing.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know you was in general. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. No worries. You see it. You see it now, though, right?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, no, sorry. P2. I told him. I'm sorry. I'm confused. I said P2 is just the antecedent. I said that. So P2 is just if this pattern is true, right? This pattern is true.
No. P2 isn't just the antecedent. P2, he's got a conditional statement. Are you Are you looking at the text chat? Wait, are you looking at the... Just stop. Are you looking at the same thing as us right here? I'll ping you 1 second. Copy message
I see it.
link.
I see
okay, you see right. You see it has a little dancing man below it, a little emoji that says jumping cat. Okay. Are you so just let's be clear right now. Are you saying this argument isn't representative of what you're trying to say and you want to change some aspect of it?
Yes.
Okay. What do you want to change?
Okay. I said, and maybe I misspoke, but I'm pretty sure I said that premise 2 is the antecedent. Right, and the conclusion would be a modus ponens. So you should just eliminate everything that isn't antecedent.
Okay, so are you just okay? That's fine, and no one's trying to just when you say P2 should be the antecedent. Are you just saying you'd like the order reversed? You want P1 to be P2 and P2 to be P1?
No, I'm saying okay. The statement before between the if and the then, that statement it is the second premise, right? So the form of the argument is if P then Q, P, therefore Q, right? It's just a modus ponens.
Okay, what is the conditional statement? Because we know the antecedent or the consequent is it's more probable that when someone says it's a boy, they're only referring to the biological sex of the child, right? That's the consequent.
So that is the consequence. That is not the consequence of this two-step argument. There's more steps.
Okay,
right?
quick. You are just so messy. Just look step by step. Is the conclusion what you're trying to argue for? Is the conclusion right?
Yes.
Okay.
The conclusion
is the argument a modus ponens argument to that conclusion?
There's more steps.
When you look, quick, do you know what I mean when I say that the argument is a tree and we're going to stay on the tree? When you say more steps, are you talking about a stage 2 argument, as in an argument for one of the premises? Or are you saying this argument has more premises in it?
This argument will have more premises in it,
So
but
it's not a modus ponens argument.
Okay, so let me be clear about that. Yeah, so let me
just
I
answer
misspoke.
that. Just answer that. Is it a modus ponens argument or not?
Given what I think you're saying, no.
Okay, all right. So let's just start.
You're saying he's asking if you're saying no, not whether Isaac's.
No, I'm just whatever.
Are you trying to express a modus ponens argument?
No,
Okay.
if I understand what you mean by that.
Do you know what I mean by? Wait, are you confused? There's no way you're confused what I mean by modus ponens. We both agree that what a modus ponens argument is.
No, we know what a modus ponens. Yeah, okay. Let's just say no. Let's just say I don't want to get bogged down. Just say no.
Quick, you understand? Like, look, the no one's trying to be. It's frustrating because you think we're trying to dunk on you, and we're not. We're not trying to dunk on you by you said it was modus ponens. Now you're saying it's. That's not what I'm doing. We're just trying to be clear about the structure. If you're thinking a bit informally, and it turns out actually the modus ponens was like one of the supporting arguments for one of the premises, like we'll be fair about that. No one's trying to rhetorically dunk on you for saying it's modus ponens, and then it turns out having a different structure, or the modus ponens is actually a stage 2 argument or anything. Literally, just for that, none of that is what people are. We just want to be clear about what it is so we can talk about it. So okay, it's not a modus ponens, but we have the conclusion right. So presumably we want different premises, basically.
Yeah, we want to add more premises to these premises, right? And
well,
and that's where
wait 1 second. When you say add more premises, that's a bit weird, because right now the way that it is, it's a logically valid argument. So more premises are going to be superfluous. So I think probably what you are talking about is actually getting rid of one or both of these premises and just supplying new premises, basically. Presumably, you're not talking about adding further premises. You're talking about rewriting one or both of these.
No, the point is the premises 1 and 2 don't get to the conclusion, right? That does
Stop. Wait. This argument right here, what Avi has written is modus ponens, unless I misread it. 1 second. If this pattern, then it follows that this X has the property and P, then it's more so if you treat everything between the if and the property P as the antecedent, and then you treat everything between then and male as the consequent, what he's written right there is in modus ponens form. So this so this, just follow me. This right now, we both agree. I'm not trying to teach you I know you know the logic, right? I assume you do. This is valid right now. Presumably you don't want to add further premises to a valid argument because they're just superfluous, right? Presumably you want to remove and that one or both of the premises and then supply new premises, right?
Okay, can I just
No, don't just answer. Just stop trying. Like, you have to understand, we don't work the way you work. You want to live in this natural language waffle world, and we're not doing it, okay? This is the argument we have. We understand that you like the way the conclusion's phrased, and you can change it if you want later. We'll be as fair as you want about that, but we're just not doing the crazy ramble stuff. This right now is a valid argument. It's in modus ponens form. Presumably you don't want to add more premises to it because they'd be superfluous, right? Because you already have a valid argument. So
okay, let's just say I have a valid argument. Yeah,
okay,
let's just go with it.
Well, just wait a second. That's not what I'm asking. That's just a point before I ask the thing, right? So this is valid as it is. So presumably you don't want to add further premises. Presumably you want to remove one or both of these premises and then give us new premises. That's a question. Yeah. Is that what you want to do?
No, I don't want to do that.
So do you want to leave it the way it is?
What I want, so the thing is, no, I don't want to do that. I'll just answer questions, but
you're just, I mean, it's impossible to, I don't know if it's worth honestly talking. Like, I can't tell if you're being difficult or what.
This is a waste of time.
It's like you really want to get into this, some waffle. Like, let's just be really clear, okay? We're just going to do very simple yes, no. Are you satisfied with the argument right now?
No.
Okay. Are you satisfied with the conclusion?
Yes.
Okay. Currently, it's a valid argument. It's a modus ponens argument. Presumably, you don't want to add further premises because those would be superfluous, given it's already valid. So, presumably, what you want to do is remove one or both of the current premises and replace them with other premises. Correct?
No.
Okay, I'm just what is the other option here?
Okay.
Do you
So
look,
can I
do you
speak
do you
or no?
do you no. Do you want to keep the premises or you want to change the premises? Let's put it that way.
I
He
want
wants to add a superfluous one.
Do you?
I don't know why it would be quote unquote superfluous. but
Superfluous in
that's
the
my-
sense that the argument's already valid. Like if you have, a modus ponens argument and then you just add a tautology, it's like it's still going to be valid, but it doesn't do anything for you. It's already valid.
But wait. The point is that's not how all valid right. So like imagine I have an argument, right? Right. So like where I have a modus ponens, and then I have a conditional where the conditional is the consequent of the modus ponens or of the other conditional, right? So basically, you have
Wait,
two
the
conditionals,
consequent
right?
of the other conditional. You're saying you
Yeah. So
have
let
a
me,
modus ponens where the consequent is itself a conditional.
so let me just write up the form of my argument. Let's just keep it explicit. Let's say I have an argument like this: if P then Q, P, Q then R, and my conclusion is to get R, right? Then it does make sense to have a superfluous premise, right? Quote unquote, what you guys would claim a superfluous premise, right? Because I want to
Wait. Write it out. Write out what you're saying. Put it in general.
Yeah. Okay. I'll put it in general. Yeah.
Yeah, because either you want to leave the premises like they are, or you want to change them. You could want to add a further premise. I would be a bit confused why you would want to do that. But we'll see what you write here. What I assume it's probably actually going to be is some kind of alteration of what's written here.
Right. So those three premises get my conclusion, right?
Where? Oh, sorry, I'm not looking at it. 1 second. P implies
in
Q. P. 1 second. P implies Q. P. Q implies R. R. Okay, but then let's look at this and let's see which of the options I gave that turns into. Copy. Paste. So let's try to get the variables correct. You want the conclusion here to be R?
Sure.
Okay, so now I've added an R beside the conclusion. You want P1 to be of the form P implies Q?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 1 second. P implies Q. And then you want P2 to be P?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then you'd be violating a kind of rule of propositional logic. You're labeling the same premise with different letters. They're the same proposition with different letters. Because if what we do here is we make premise 2 P, then you see how you have this proposition, then it's more probable that when someone says it's a boy, they're referring only to the biological sex of the child, male, labeled as Q in one place and then R in another. Before we even talk about the
So,
third premise.
so the problem is it's not so R is so you see R is different than Q, right? Because the Q is
Then it's more
sorry.
probable. Let's just write them side by side. I'm just copy pasting
Mhm.
them. It's possible there's a typo, so we'll deal with that. There's Q, or I guess I'll remove the then because that's part of the conditional. And there's R. Oops, sorry, I think I copy pasted incorrectly. Oh, gotta get the T.
I see the confusion.
Okay.
I see the confusion. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
so
sorry.
those are the same, Quick.
Yes, I agree. So I
Yeah, you see, we're not trying to be unfair. We're also not trying to
No.
dunk. We're just trying to get the form that we all agree on so we can have an honest conversation about it. Do you understand? It's frustrating me that I feel like you think we're trying to be bad faith with you. Do you think we're trying to fuck you around or something?
No, I don't think they're doing that, but it is it can be very tricky, but it's fine.
Yeah, because that's fair, and I understand it's not comfortable when you have a thing and you understand it or you get it at the level of natural language, and someone is pressing you to be more precise. But I want you to understand we understand that frustration on your part. For our part, the frustration is when we climb into all that natural language you have going on. It feels to us, maybe it all makes sense and we're confused, but it feels to us very messy. So we're kind of at cross purposes here. I don't think anyone's trying to be mean, although I've been frustrated once or twice. It's just you have your natural language thing. We want it to be more clear. There's a kind of difference in expectation here. So let's just so yeah, you do see the problem though. So we could obviously resolve this by we could label them the same way and make it a modus ponens. We could change something around. Do you have a sense of how you want to resolve it?
Yeah, so I realized that the first premise is not what I had said in my mind, and I didn't read it carefully.
That's okay.
Yeah, so
no worries. Okay,
so
P1 gone. 1 second. Let me get rid of it. P1 gone.
right. So I'll just type out what I think it was in my head P1.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And again, that's why we say to look at it. Saying look at it is not a attempted rhetorical dunk. It is literally we want to all look at it together because then we can be on the same page. There's just this sorry, well, cut me off whenever you have it written, but there's just this crazy norm of doing these things in this waffly paradigm. And it's like, how do we ever fucking get anywhere like that? Even if you have
it's like
great.
some people get caught into this trap where it's like, oh, it's just so obvious what the point was being made. Let's
Okay.
just have that in natural language.
Yes, which is not to say that Quick's wrong or doesn't make sense. It's just that I don't like having conversations in that way. Okay, so P1 is if the pattern. Okay, wait. P1 is what we currently have as P2. So I assume basically I can just get rid of P2 for now. So I erased P2 because it was word for word identical to that. And if you look up, I now have what you just wrote as P1.
Yeah, and here's P2.
Cool. Okay, 1 second. P2. Okay, and let's put that there, and then let's just do a good old form check. Okay, if this pattern is true, then it follows that this. Okay, then 1 second. What's the consequent? Then it follows that. Okay. Oh wait, is there a P3?
Yeah, so now I would
Okay.
add the premise, and yeah, this might be the controversial premise. I don't like it as a conditional, but just to be formal and make this easy for all of us, I'll just say yeah, something like. Let me type it out.
Yeah, we understand it could not be perfect. We understand you might want to revise it at a later point. We just want some shared foundation. What we're talking about. Actually, I already know what you're gonna do. I'm gonna see if I can beat you to it, but based on the form you gave earlier, I think you're going to go because you want to go P implies R basically. If it follows that you know this, then it's more probably this. And then I can put letters beside all them so it's clear which premises are what things. So that's P. Okay, so the first one, if this pattern, then something. So that's, like you said, P implies Q. The second premise, like you said, is P. Then the third premise is going to be Q implies R. Then the conclusion is R, and we have a valid argument. That's what you're trying to do, correct?
Yep, yep. And I
And
posted it.
you look. Oh, okay, sorry. Here, I'll repost also the whole thing so we have it there. Oh, I mean, you
I think
basically wrote them all there, but I mean, I think
yeah,
we're all converging on what's being said now. So let's just read this through and make sure that this is right, so we don't end up backtracking later. Which again, backtrack in the sense of needing to change things is fine, but backtrack in the sense of we missed something on the first right, that's avoidable. So let's try to avoid that. So premise one: if this pattern is true, X implies P, then it follows that you know at t equals 1, where 1 is the present, x has the property p. Premise 2, this pattern is true. And then premise 3, if it follows that you know at t equals 1, where x is the present, x has the property p, then it's probably, sorry, Avi, you have some typos in here. I'm going to fix this. It's more probable that when someone says it's a boy, they're referring only to the biological sex of the child, and I'll just also correct that in conclusion. It's more probable that when someone says it's a boy, they're referring only to the biological sex of the child. This is correct. Yes, Quick? You're
Yes.
muted. Okay, now
Yeah,
there might be more frustration if we end up asking for an argument for a premise, but yeah.
Argument for premise 3, please. I don't see how
Yeah, I think premise
Yeah.
3 is a controversial premise. I agree.
And just for
So
the
let's
sake
go to
of
that- so-
clarity, Avi, do you don't, I guess you don't need to do this, but do you have a take on P1 and P2? Are you taking those to be true, or what are you doing?
there's a question of x. If x is p, then it doesn't follow that x has the property p. I'd have to think. If something is, I think then does x have the property p? It's
also a tiny bit weird to say if this is true, x is p. Okay, well, yeah, sorry.
No, we're saying if x is p, then x has the property p.
Okay, well, whatever. We can not. If you want to focus on P3, that's fine.
I like to focus on the relevant. The relevant. There's like sort of like nitpicky things that, but I don't want to try to nitpick.
I was just trying to maybe give Quick something there, because I thought maybe we'd have a case where we can just grant some of them and table them and be like, okay, we have agreement on all this, and we can just focus on one thing. But it looks like we might, even if P3 gets established, need to loop back over P1 and 2. But okay, all right. Sorry.
Those are. P3 is the main one, because like those things I could probably tidy up 1 and 2. But yeah, P3, yeah, that's the main thing. So let's get P3 as a conclusion, and let's see if do you have an argument for that.
So do you want me to give a formal argument or?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. Let me think.
So P3, this is our conclusion now.
Well, wait. Also, 1 second. Did he just say? Do you want a formal argument?
Oh, it's something that you can, if you have a case to make that could easily be formalized or something like that, or some sort of, linear checker or something that it's clear for me to understand you. Yeah, then we can try to do that as well.
Because basically we want a sense of premises and a conclusion, but you don't have to literally think about how to make it formally valid. As long as we can roughly understand what's being said, it'll be fine. But I think, because I suspect what Avi was reacting to was, I don't want it to turn into a crazy natural language thing, but I suspect you might have slightly overstated what you want there, because you don't require it be formal, presumably. You just want premises, at least. Avi.
I'm sorry, what's the last part you said?
I was saying that you might have overstated what you're asking for a bit, in a way that might lead people to think you're asking.
Oh yeah, no. I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm saying, well, I do want it, but the reason I want it is not because I require it. It's just because I suspect that if I don't get a formal case from Quick, then it's going to devolve in some natural language sort of thing where it turns into a waffle mouse.
Okay, but let's put it this way.
But I'm happy to try to, if there's like a case.
Yeah, exactly.
That
formal is ideal, but if not, then like just premises basically, and as long as we can generally tell what's going on, it should be fine.
I'll try my best to see how to make. Give me 1 second. Okay. This will be the big premise. And tell me if you're not happy with this, I might have to formalize it more. But this will be the big premise, I suspect. If at T1, right, if at the present, I have property P, right, then, no, here's how, yeah. Here's the argument. At T1, the fetus does not satisfy the social properties of the, right, don't match the social definitions. right? That's the argument, right? So
Wait,
that
so
would
so premise one is
at T1,
Mhm.
the fetus does not have the properties, right, of the social definition.
does not have the properties of the social definition.
Right. So, yeah. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Is there
Do
another?
you agree with that or not? I can make it formal, but if you agree with that,
Fetus
can-
does not have the properties of the social. Wait, before we see if we agree with premises, I just want to see the structure of the argument to see how you're getting to the conclusion.
okay,
So
well, the argument would be from that would be roughly at T1, right? We know at T1 it has the property P, right? So, and then it's going to be something like if it doesn't have the social properties, then P.
by properties of the social definition, just as a clarifier, does that just mean because I just take the thesis and the two hypotheses I'm trying to resolve is just the conclusion being when someone says it is a boy, they are only referring to biological sex. So is that just to say the same thing as at T1, the fetus does not have the property such that when someone says it is a boy, they are only referring to the biological sex of the child? Or they're referring to they're not referring to anything else? They're not referring to social aspects? Because when is that just, or is it just to say that the fetus is not fulfilling a social role at that point? What does it mean?
Yes, the second part, right? It's not satisfy the conditions of the social roles, right? So it does not satisfy the conditions. Like, first of all, it cannot self-identify.
It doesn't
Correct.
fulfill a social role. It doesn't when you say satisfy the conditions of what social definition?
Okay, so let me just give you this. Okay, so let's say the very easy case would be self-ID, right? If there's a self-ID definition, it would the fetus at that time cannot self-identify, right? So obviously the fetus at that moment does not satisfy the conditions of that definition.
Yeah, so
right?
the fetus is not currently fulfilling a social role.
Right, but we know it has.
But is it wait? So is that what's being said in premise one?
Yes.
Okay, so at T1, the fetus does not fulfill a social role. Is that the same thing as what's being said when you say at T1 the fetus does not have the properties of the social definition?
Wait, repeat the premise one more time. Sorry.
At T1, the fetus does not fulfill a social role.
At
Is
T1.
that the same thing as at T1 the fetus does not have the properties of the social definition, or is there other things in there?
No, I think that's right. I think that's right. Let's go with
Okay, so we could simplify that to say at T1 the fetus does not fulfill a social role. Yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so then and then the second and so the okay, so then we have do we have the second premise?
Okay, the second premise is at T1 it has the property P, right?
It has the property P.
Let's just even make it more explicit. Say it has the property of being a boy, right? Because that's the controversial premise, right?
It has the property of being a boy. Okay?
Yeah. Right, and then there's going to be another conditional probably.
And by boy we mean we're
just leaving it as a blank term.
where you wait, I just want to make sure that there's no equivocation. So is boy there being defined in terms of
No, there's no
same
definition.
sense in the conclusion? When someone says it is a boy, they're only referring to it is property of being a boy. The boy could just be whatever is being referred to.
Put quotations mark put quotations mark around the word boy, so it's very explicit. We're just talking about the sound or the symbol. Yeah.
But you're saying it's a property of being a boy.
Yeah, I'm saying whatever they mean by that, whatever is the
Mhm.
thing, right?
Mhm.
Right, cannot be
Yeah.
the social definition, right? Because they claim that this baby at that time has that property, right?
Mhm.
But they don't have the properties of the social definition, right? That is the argument. That is the argument.
So okay. So I think I think I will. I think I understand what you're trying to say. So if I will try to do this in natural for a second. If it seems like I don't, I will go back and insist that we tidy up this argument and make it valid. So I think what you're trying to say is that, so look, at t equals 1, the fetus isn't fulfilling any social role. But at t equals 1, we still want to say that it has the property of being a boy. They're still saying it's a boy, even though it doesn't fulfill a social role of being a boy. So it seems like when someone's saying it's a boy, then they're saying it is a boy. It's not fulfilling a social role, so they mean something other than a social role when they say it's a boy.
Right. And if I think that's a very straightforward counterexample, just
Right?
like
Well, it's not a counterexample; it's an inference, but
it would be a
it's
counterexample, just like a Gettier, how do you pronounce the name, case would
no,
be, right?
that's wait. It's
fine, let's not go down the rabbit hole.
it's not it's an inference. So the reason it so someone can just say when they say it's a boy, they just mean that it will fulfill this social role. They could be wrong about that, but that could be, because remember, the claim is that they're only referring to the biological sex. But someone can say, when they say it is a boy, they're just saying it is an entity that will fulfill this. So it has the property of probably fulfilling this role. So they may be thinking about, in their mind, they may have this notion of, well, they may be, playing soccer or football as a kid with the other boys.
Okay.
So when they say it is a boy, they could just mean, or one of the things that they could be thinking of, that doesn't have to only be the one. Again, it's not mutually exclusive. One of the things they could mean is that it has the property of probably fulfilling such and such social roles in the future. Now, if that's the case, and this argument doesn't, this wouldn't be something that would lead me to conclude that that all of those things are excluded when someone says it is a boy. That the only thing they're thinking about is the current biological state. It could be that they're thinking about the biological state, but some of the things they're thinking about are also, this thing has the property of plausibly fulfilling certain social roles.
Okay. Well,
in the future.
If what you're saying is right, if the baby, let's say, dies after the gender reveal, right? Fetus as a fetus, right? Late term. Okay, miscarriage. Okay. Would you say that the parents would still say he was a boy?
Yes, because he was at that point. Because remember, said if it was a boy, meaning it was an individual who had the property of plausibly fulfilling these social roles. The fact that the boy died after doesn't mean it didn't have the property of plausibly fulfilling the social roles. It was plausible.
Well, would you say that they would even say in the present tense? They might still, even though it's dead, they still will say something like, he was our boy, or he is our
Yeah,
boy.
he was. Yes, he was. He was our boy because he was an individual who, at that time, had the properties of plausibly fulfilling that social role. Didn't turn out that way, but at the time, it was an individual that plausibly had those properties.
But even in the present tense, right? Because they know.
Yes, in the present tense, it's still in the present. With respect to the present tense, it was our boy. That is in the past.
No. Wait. So what you're saying is when they say it, like if they're using again, if they what your claim is when they say it is our boy, it is our boy that like it's our boy that died, right? Let's say they say that, right? You're saying that
I
what
mean,
they're
but
saying
they made now. Just to be clear, when they say it's our boy that died, I think they mean something else. I think people mean something in a different way than they say it is a boy. But I'm just giving you the case for as an example. Like I think so. That's a whole different thing. When I think when people look back on their like deaths, this is like a moot point. But I think when people look back on the deaths of their children and whatnot, I think their whole state of like what they're picking out when they say this was our boy, and when someone says this is a boy in like a gender reveal or whatever event that is, I think they're thinking very different senses. I don't think they're really tracking a lot of the same thing. There's some overlap, but yeah. So someone can say this was our boy in a biological sense, and they could say, but this when they say this is a boy in the gender reveal sense, they could mean it in a more of a social role. That would be fine, and I suspect I'd have to think about what if you're asking what's more toward one or the other. I'm not sure, but either way, someone can just say if someone wanted to maintain a social role, they can say, well, yeah, this was our boy, this was our entity that plausibly may have fulfilled some social roles, and they didn't.
Right. So what you're saying is plausibly. I mean, I guess this is kind of where we're getting at the heart of the issue. You're saying it's plausible that what they're saying is that in the past,
Well, they would be saying it was plausible because it was our boy.
right? So what you're saying is, right?
Yeah, it was
So
plausible. It was plausible that this were to happen, and it didn't happen.
Right, so just because
Yeah, people talk like that all the time. It was plausible that this were to happen, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, but no, that part people talk like that all the time. But the problem I'm trying to explain to you is that
So when they
don't
say
talk.
that's what I'm saying. When they say this was our boy, they could be talking like that.
Yeah, so but the problem is, and this is where the wholehearted issue is, and maybe we'll just agree to disagree because I don't. I agree people talk like that all the time. What I'm saying is people don't when they talk like it is a boy, right? I very rarely I can't think of another case where that sentence can be taken to mean what you just said, where it's taken to be about the past and the counterfactual understanding of.
Well, when you say it was a boy,
well, if I say in the present, even if I say it
in
is.
the present. So I think it's more about that in the present than. So I agree with you about the past. So I incidentally agree with you that when people talk about say it was a boy, they're not thinking of a sort of they're not. Or they may be thinking in some sense, but they're not really thinking about, counterfactually, if we look at it, there's some plausibility that this would fulfill a social role. I think in some more vague way, they are thinking that in a very loose way. But I think when they say it is a boy, when people say it is a boy in the shower, it's like when they say it is a boy in this gender reveal or whatever, I think the things that people think of and the things they try to mean when they say that is a lot more future oriented or plausible future oriented, and I'm not sure what really explains this intuition that I have, but yeah, I don't think so. I'm okay with one being more biological in the was sense when people use that. I cannot take a view that when people say this, they're thinking more about this biological, and it's true. They're thinking more about the biological state of death, like there was a loss. There was there's no life anymore, so they're thinking that maybe their whole mindset is in that frame. But I think and that's fine with it being a different sense when someone says, "Oh, it is a boy," and I'm just picturing what I would think when I'd say it is a boy. Like, what would I think? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, here's the last point I'll make on this. Maybe just because I'm kind of on the view you're talking about, right? At what point do you think that this happens? I'm kind of curious. So do you think that when they do fulfill the social roles, the term boy switches meaning at that moment from this quote unquote future way of thinking into the present?
I think not only that, I think there's all sorts of different meanings of boy that are used, and I think there's all sorts of different ways that people think about it, present, past, and future. And that all changes in various different contexts to various different degrees. So I think that like when someone says, "Come here, boy," versus "It's a boy." There's a different sense of the word "boy" being used.
No, but my sense.
When I think when someone says, "You're oh, this is my boy," when they just find out about the gender, versus when as the boy is growing up and as like an adolescent, this is my boy. They mean something very different in terms of what.
Yeah, so that's your view. Okay, just be clear. You're saying that let's give it a name just to even make it easier. Let's say we call it John. Okay, so when it's a fetus and you say John is a boy, when the parents say John is a boy, you're saying that they mean we already went over that, right? Now let's say when it's 10 and they say John is a boy, you think that the meaning changes, right? They mean something else.
Yeah, I think they are meaning something else when they say it's a boy.
Yeah, I mean,
there's some overlap in the meaning. I think there's overlap, but I don't think they're trying to pick out it in the same way completely. I don't think there's complete overlap there.
Okay,
I think if you were to ask to break down what you mean when you say John is a boy at 10 years old versus what do you mean when John is a boy as a fetus.
Wait, I'm fine with it not being. Just my question is just about the tense, right? The tense.
Oh, they don't know. Oh, yeah. Yes, and that as well. Yes, I think people may think much more present tense about it than future tense as the child ages. I think when the especially during gestation, especially prior to birth, I think people are a lot more future thought, have a lot more future. They're more future oriented in their thoughts and what they're picking out when they talk about their future child. I mean, look, this is when they talk about their baby. What are they thinking? Are they thinking about like the fetal structure? Are they thinking about the umbilical cord? Are they thinking about? I mean, I guess not really. I mean, I guess in some ways they're thinking about like, oh, the little cute little thing that kicks, but I don't really think it's that anatomy that they're thinking about. I think what they're thinking, they're thinking about some kind of vision that they have in their mind about the life of this person, what's gonna happen. Yes, it's much more future oriented than when the child is already born.
Yeah, I think that's. I don't know. I mean, maybe we might be hitting a wall at this point because I think. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I can just analyze my own concepts and I can analyze how most people talk. I just think that's not. I'm not sure where you got that from. I don't know. So maybe
I can tell you where I got that from. I get it from two. I get it from two things. Well, one is my own introspection. Is when if I think about having a child, what would I think at a given time point? If I were to find out it was a boy or a girl, what are the things that come into my mind? And I say, oh my gosh, it's a boy, it's a girl. What am I picking out? What does it mean? It's like a whole bunch of things about the overwhelming majority of things I'm thinking about are things about some point in time after that. Whether it's what it's going to look like. Well, maybe you think differently, and it's fine.
Yeah. Well, my problem would be in this. I'll just leave it. I mean, I think because this might get too technical. Like, it's not clear to me even how we're talking to each other because it seems on your view, the word boy changes so radically based on context, right? So, for example, what if I don't even know all these facts, right? So, to me,
well, I think it's okay because I think first of all, I don't know how we may be using radically different, but I think it's not radical enough such that either we don't understand each other enough to make do socially. We have conversations about it with that term all the time, and we go about just fine. And we also could understand these a bit different contexts, different senses of the word in different contexts. So we have contextual cues.
Yeah,
I can have a contextual.
Yeah, but my claim is when the context is basically, the context is very similar in my opinion, right? The only difference is just temporal changes. It's just a time change.
I don't think that's. I think there's a lot of differences that go along with the temporal difference. But one right. difference, you can't see the baby. It's in the womb. You have to use some kind of technology to see it.
Right, but that's
a big one. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are different besides just the mere temporal time. Like it's just.
So, I don't know. I mean, I don't. Like I said.
But anyway, it's a matter. It's just an empirical.
Yeah, look, I guess.
But you asked me where I get. But it's not only where I get. It's not just my personal introspection, which is true, by the way. It's also just going to these events or just meeting people who are pregnant and saying, "Oh my gosh, like, do you know the gender yet?" Like, and then they say, "Oh yes, I just found out it's a boy. Now I have to buy all." The first thing I say after, "Okay, I got to buy all these like these sets of clothing and this toy." Like, they're already thinking about the first thing out of their mouth is like the future preparations and plans related to the gender.
Yeah, but that's look.
Now, maybe that doesn't mean that's what they meant, but maybe that doesn't mean it's not a future-oriented thing. But it's like it seems pretty future that they're thinking in some sort of future way when they.
Yeah, they're thinking about the future, right? But the point is, they again. We're just. Like I said, but they.
No, yeah, they were. Yes, you could be thinking about. I grant that you could be thinking about the future without meaning a boy in the sense that's future tense. I grant that.
No, on the contrary, right? My point would be, if to me this is the whole hard issue. If they want to say what you're saying, why did they just use the future tense? I guess that's the best way I could put my argument. If you're, because to me it's just a simpler explanation, right? Your claim is
because some things just aren't commonly. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
No,
why? I hear you. Yeah. You're saying why don't they just say it will be a boy?
Exactly.
Why are they saying yeah? Yeah, and there's a number of reasons. Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons. I think even though people are thinking about a good amount of future orientation when they talk about, say, it is a boy, I think that we have just some established language, and it just would sound weird. It's like, oh, I have a fetus. It is a fetus, and I found out it will be a boy. You could have a
why would that be weird? That's my whole argument.
Because we haven't been sometimes language that accurately describes the way we talk about things isn't commonly used and does sound weird.
No, but like, for example, if it's really like, your engagement example is actually kind of good. Like you but the point is, if it's future oriented, right? If it's part of my concept, right? This is my whole point. Nouns aren't tensed, right? So it's not that, right? So rather, the clear way of normal English speaker the way they should use normal English would be, the noun doesn't have tense. Just add it to the verb, right? Just make the future tense of the verb, and it will be very clear what you're saying, right? So there's not all these weird.
No, I get that. Look, the point about grammar isn't going to be motivating here. We already went through that. Because people already because it's clear.
Your example.
People already.
No, but your example is precisely what I'm trying to say, though, right? Because if you do say we will get married, right? That's my whole point. Right? You say we will get married.
Yes.
Right? You don't. Right.
So it's funny you mention it. It is funny you mention it a little bit. So, there was someone who one of the pickup lines was like, you are my wife already. You just don't know it yet. So in some sense, there's like when people say, even when people say, "Oh, she's my girlfriend," like they're thinking about, most of that is in a mostly present sense, but it's not only in present sense. They're thinking about some things that relate to the future. Like if you knew that, like if it was just unclear about anything that would happen to the future, it would change the way they think about girlfriend. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's like more of a, like, all of these concepts that are going through someone's head that they're picking out. There's some degree of biologic, some degree of social, there's some degree of future, some degree of present, even if they're using the word is. There's certain things that are going to be entering their mind that they're going to try to pick out.
There's future, but that's not that's what I'm saying. You have to get distinguished between like analytic and synthetic truths, right? Like the point is, a lot of the examples you're giving are like to me would be what I would distinguish synthetic facts, right? So they're not just true by definition.
I'm just talking about the things people mean. I'm not talking about like an analytic fact or a synthetic fact. That's not what.
No, but that's where I'm contending with you, right? My claim is that the statements you're making aren't just what. They're not analytic truths about the
no, it's a synthetic. It's about what people mean. It's an empiric. This is something that will be resolved empirically. It's not going to be resolved by the.
Yeah, that's not what I mean by analytics. It's fine. Let's just forget it. I think, look. My claim would be in the marriage case, and your example was a little, I don't know, but like I said, right, you are engaged, but you will get married, right? Like the way normally, like I said, the more way normally we distinguish.
So when I say analytic, analytics is it's an empirical matter because it's a question about we are trying to figure out what people mean, right? If we're trying to figure out what people mean, there could be analytic truths about what people mean. No fucking shit, of course. But if we're on the quest, if we're trying to find the matter of what people mean, like here's a group of people, we don't know what they mean, let's try to figure it out. That's an empirical task.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, I agree that that's an empirical task. That's not what I'm trying to say. Is the example you're saying where like, oh, people are thinking future oriented. What I'm trying to say is it's like think of any facts about the sun, the moon, or anything like that, right? The point is, once there's truths about the concept, and then we can, from facts about the world or other things, we can infer other facts, right? So that's kind of what I think is going on a lot of these future gender cases, right? The point is, like on the biological view, right? So like what's going on is when you say, oh, I'm going to buy it blue clothing or whatever, right? Is something like the way I think the reasoning is, there's this correlation between having this biology and let's say these social facts, right? Like I don't know, liking blue, the boy or whatever, and right, but that's not a truth by definition, right? That's a synthetic truth.
No, I'm not.
Well, I'm just trying to explain to me because the example you're giving. So that's my point is you can have future-oriented synthetic facts about the baby, the boy, right? But what I'm claiming is, if the claim would be, I mean, at this point we're just going in a circle. I think we know where we disagree, and I'll just let people look. My claim is just that. Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, just okay, fine. My claim is just that it seems pretty straightforward in English. The example you gave, I could think more about it, but at minimum, it's not literal, and it's clear that in this case we are just talking normal literal English. In normal plain English, if I wanted to talk about the future,
definitely. I think in the example, like you mean the example of you're my wife, you just don't know it already.
Yeah.
I think it's a different sense of the word wife. See, and people try to get out of like, oh, but it's a metaphor, it's not literal. Like, okay, but I think that has a lot of problems. That response has a lot of issues. I think what he's trying to get at is it's like a different sense of the word wife. Like, okay, well, it could, and by the way, a different sense of the word wife could just be like in the future you will be the literal sense of the word wife, or it could be that you're that close to me or something like that. It could be a number of things, but
maybe.
But whatever it is, like this person is saying that this person has something about them and it's related to the future, and it seems to be related to the future in some way.
No, but that's my point. If you're saying it's a sense argument, which is fine. Let's just like the point is then they're saying something like they're not saying that.
I think it's kind of clear what they're saying. I think they're saying that we will be married in the future. Like, and it's just a foregone thing. Like, you're my wife. We're already married. You just don't know it yet. Like we're for each other. We're meant to be. You're in the future. We're gonna get married. You're gonna be my wife. Like they're using the word is. Even though they're using the word is, they're referring to that person as something that would occur in the future. A relation that would occur in the future. I think that's what someone would mean when they say that.
Right. So if that's what they're saying, let me think. You are my wife. We're already. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, to me, it seems very obvious that there's like some play on words and stuff going on there. But yeah, like I said, I don't think that's what's.
Well, I agree. There's a play on words, but I think that's what the play on words means. Like, I think
that's fine, but that's my point, right? Like, like idiomatic phrases are kind of the cases where like the grammar of English tends to be a little weirder, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if you stick to simple declarative sentences, the kind of examples.
Yeah, but this is like, but language can get messy all the time like this. There's all the people. What I'm trying to impress on you is that this view, and look, it could be that they're referring to it in a mostly biologic sense. But I'm trying to keep you. I wouldn't fall into this trap of thinking like, oh, like, well, if we stick to just declarative sentences, it's grammatically correct. That's then they're not referring to that in any other sense. It's just going to be, look, it's probably some sort of mess, and the mess may lean more biologic and less social. The mess may lean more social, less biologic. It may lean mostly present when they use the word is, but really there's some component of future meaning that they, even though they're using the word is, and it probably is. I'm just so you can have the meaningful conversation as to what degrees those things are, and what percentage of the different population means that and I don't know the answer to that, but I think I'm very doubtful of the idea that almost everyone has no meaning about future when they use is to apply nouns, or that it's like known, like there's no social consideration there, no social sense of that, by proportion, that they're just referring to like, well, what gametes is this individual making?
The more I think about what you're saying, I don't even think they're saying what. I mean, I don't get it right, but like, I don't think that's what they're saying in your example, like that you're gonna be my wife in the future.
Okay, I do.
Yeah, I mean, because it's just more of a pickup line to me, like because if the wife didn't, let's say the wife eventually says,
okay, but no, but let's say someone said it earnestly. Okay, but they said it earnestly. Said like, listen, I really believe you're my wife already. You just don't know it.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I'm saying if what you're saying is right, then let's say the girlfriend at some point in the future could say to the boyfriend, like, you told me you're gonna marry me, right? But I think the boyfriend would say, well, obviously I didn't mean, like, you can't. That's not.
Well, they could deny it, but if he meant it that way, then he wouldn't. Then he would be lying by denying it. He would just be saying the same thing in a different word.
Yeah, but that's the. Well, I'm
you may not say like I am going to marry you explicitly in that exact phrasing, but there are ways of saying you're going to marry someone that aren't explicitly in that phrasing.
Yeah, like I said, I think this is where.
So if I say I'm going to put a ring on it, I'm not saying I'm going to marry you in that exact phrasing, and someone would be correct to say, "Well, you didn't. You said you're going to marry me." Like well, no, I told you I was just going to put a ring on it. Didn't have to be the marriage finger.
I know
the pinky.
No, I know what you're saying. I'm just saying again. It just seems like, again, our intuitions here disagree, because I think if I was the guy, I think the guy would just say, obviously it was just a pickup line. Like, obviously it's weird to hold me to the claim that I'm now.
Well, some might go back and say it was a pickup line. Maybe they're lying, maybe they're not. But some, I think, really do mean it that way.
Maybe, I don't know. Like I said, I just that's how I mean, I just think that's a very, I don't know. It's to me, it's weird because, again, that example is very, very tricky in my opinion. But again, the example of the boy, it's, I don't know how else, but like I said, it's not. It's just, I don't like. It would, by the way, solve all this confusion. By the way, it actually would, because it would also kind of clearly delineate against. It would actually be an argument if they said will. It would actually would be almost an argument for. Actually, it would be an argument against the biological view, right? Because the claim would be, again, it would be the opposite way, right? The biology is in the present, right? So why would you say?
Look, I think their confusion is that when it comes to the word boy, there's multiple senses of it, and so instead of disambiguating them, what we've done is we've found ways of tracking meaning by just using the same word and relying on context and social cues to try to differentiate those different senses when it's important to differentiate. Happens to be in many contexts, it's not that important to differentiate it if you're talking about a biological sense or if you're talking about a gender sense, because the answer is just going to be coextensive either way. In most cases, not all cases. So we get along just fine by doing it, and so it's less work to just use one word. And that's probably why there's this. But really, what people mean is probably some sort of messy mix. There's and different people have different sorts of components of one mix versus another mix. And so it's not just this idea. I hope you don't come to this idea that, like, oh well, everyone's just meaning that, this biology, and they're not meaning anything about the social role. Or just like it would be silly if I were to say, well, we're just talking about the social role that it is or will be playing, and we don't mean anything about biology. Of course we mean things about biology to some varying degree.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't know. We're going, like I said, I think the 2 points I'm happy with, I mean, we just disagree, was the point about, John is a boy fetus, John is a boy 10 years old. I think those are cases where the term is being used, if not very, very, very similarly. And oftentimes your examples, like I said, it's going to get very technical about language. Your whole point is, to me, at those times we know different facts, right? So
And this is another good example. Like when someone says this game is over, and it's not over.
okay,
Someone brought that up.
okay.
They use the word is. The game is over. Oh my gosh, this game is over. And they leave. The game's not over. It will be over.
No,
But they use the word is.
Yeah, wait. The game is over. I think that's. I don't see how that's.
No, like when one team is beating the other team by a lot, right? The phrase they say the game is over, even though it's like even though it's not over. It's like the third quarter or whatever. It's like you still got the ninth inning left.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, that's a case, like I said, where it's practically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're saying it's what they mean is that it will be this result. Like the game will be over. They mean like it will be over with a given result. Like it's a foregone conclusion. And so they're talking about something in the future when they say is.
No, I think what they're saying is that at the current moment, like it's decided, right? The match, like in some sense you're right that it is sort of future in the sense that they're saying currently it is true at this current moment that most likely,
Most likely this will happen in the future, right?
Right. But the point is, even that example, in that example, right? So the meaning of the term wouldn't change tomorrow, right? Or the next day or in 5 years, right?
Just giving you an example where someone is using the word is and it's clearly referring to something in the future, not the present.
Yeah.
Like or at least to whatever it's picking out something in the future. It's not only talking about some present thing.
Yeah, but the point is, in this case, you have to pick out something. The point is, the word is must. You can't say stuff about the future. I'm saying that it has to pick out something also about the present.
Yeah, what's being picked out as the present is some probabilistic state about the future.
Okay, but if that's the claim, right, that's my whole point is, if that's your claim, right? If that is your claim, right? If that's your claim, at what point so your view is when it starts to satisfy the social roles, then it becomes in the present tense. Like it just literally means right. Like the grammar stays exactly the same, so it's syntactically exactly identical, right? But you're saying now it switches from this future prediction claim that you're saying into the other claim.
Well, it's just like the game is over. The game is over. They're talking about like at T minus 20 minutes, like there's the example someone put out the example. They're talking about the future. At T equals at 20 minutes from then, they're talking about the present. When they say the game is over. So yeah, tenses can change about this. They can say the same thing. The game is over, and in one sense, the game is over refers to the future. But just a little bit later, it refers to the present.
Right. So you think that's what's going on in the case of the gender? I just want to know, is that your view?
Not in the same, not in the one-to-one comparison, not in the same sort of way. What I do think is going well in a sort of way I do, which is that when someone says it is a boy, I think part of that is a statement about the sort of social roles that will plausibly be playing, at least for a certain percentage of the population, what they're trying to say. And it's not the only thing they're trying to say. It's a part of it. So, for example, if they found out that was not the case, if they found out that for whatever reason they saw into the future and they saw that this individual would be transgender, and very early on they would be born male but try to be or try to act like a female, would dress like a female, and just live the rest of their life like a female, take hormones, whatever. If they knew that in the moment about the future, there's a certain proportion of the population that would not say it's a boy. There's a certain proportion of the population that would say, oh, it's a girl. That just is going to be, have a rough time and just go through transition. And there's a certain portion of the population that would still say, no, it's a boy, that will be confused and think it's a girl. So there are some people who are future oriented about this, or at least they take the future considerations in mind when they use the word is.
Well, I would just I would just ask those
Do
people.
you think that's wrong? Do you think that's not true?
No, I would just be confused because I'd say to them, if that's the case, why would
All right, so it's not. So it's clear what I'm saying. You agree that people are doing that, right?
I think again my confusion would be
You think they wouldn't do that if they knew that they would be trans?
I would ask those people.
Wait, no. I know what you would ask those. No, do you think they? But do you at least agree that they would be saying it that way? At least those people. You don't think there's a substantial amount of people that if they found out that early on they're gonna transition, they would say, "Oh, well, it's a girl. It's a girl. It was a girl all along. You're being true to yourself." So, like, they would say, "Oh, it's not a boy anymore. It's not a boy anymore. It's like it never was a boy. It's a girl." You don't think there would be people who would say that?
Wait, who say? Repeat the last sentence again.
You don't? Do you not think there are people who would say that?
So yes, they will say what that
they will say that it's a girl if they were provided with the information that in the future it would be transgender very early on.
I think they might. Would they say that?
Is there a subset of the population, a meaningful subset of the population that would say that? It doesn't have to be the majority.
My position would be.
How about the pro-trans people? Would they say it?
I think the pro-trans people. I don't know. My suspicion would be they would say it will be a girl, right? Like not.
They wouldn't say it is a girl. I think they would say it is a girl.
But
if you dial that information in, a lot of them would say it is a girl. I think, like they would want to say like, oh, they're being true to themselves. It really was because this person really was a girl all along, and they were just born in the wrong body or something like that. They would try to say something like that, but then they would say it is a girl.
So those people, let me ask you this question.
Wait, but do you agree that they would say that? Before we go on,
I don't.
You don't think the pro-trans people would say that?
If they're rational, I don't think they would say that. So I don't know.
Wait. Let's talk about whether they're rational or not. Hold on, wait.
Well, that's.
Do you think?
Because I'm assuming they are rational. I'm giving the argument.
Hold on. Come on. Just before we dial, just do you think pro-trans people find out that they're going to have a trans girl, meaning they're going to have a male child, and they know that it's in the future, very early on, going to transition. Now, if someone asks, is it a boy or a girl? Do you think they're going to say it's a boy, or do you think they're going to say it's a girl?
I think they would say it's neither, right?
Do you think so like non-binary?
No, I just think
or something like that. It's neither a boy nor a girl. That's what their answer is going to be.
I think given their definition, they would not assign a gender.
Wait. Forget about Forget about some like analytic thing. Like we already put a definition on it. Like I'm just asking you given these facts, what do you think these people would say?
I just said that. I don't think they would, right? And I gave you my reason.
I think so. You think they would say so they would say no, it's not a girl.
No, of course not. It's not a girl. Yeah, of course not.
That's what they would say. All right. Yeah. I don't think they would say that. I think if you asked a good amount, I think you asked the pro-trans people who found out they would be having a trans girl, they'd say it's a girl, namely a trans girl.
Yeah, well, then I would ask again, if I ask those same people the same question, well...
But you could have an objection. Wait, you may have an objection to that. But okay. I think that is what they would say.
Okay, so my argument is...
Wait, do we deny that that's what they would say?
I've multiple times now have denied it, and
Okay, all right. Well, then I'm not sure. Okay, well, we just deny him. Okay,
that's great.
And we disagree on
Yeah, great. So just to be clear, and I keep trying to. My whole point being, if the concept that they have is what you claim they have, right? Then they would not say that. That's my whole point, right? They would just
Wait, so if they have the concept about what future role they're gonna they have the property of plausibly playing, they would not say that? They would not say that no. It's a girl, even though they do have the property of plausibly playing a girl?
They would say if they'll just say it will, right? That's my whole point. They will say it will.
No, right, but the concept isn't wait. But the concept I'm saying is that right now they have the property of plausibly fulfilling the role of a girl. in the future. If that is what the concept they have, then they can say is, because the future thing is already baked into that.
Yeah, I know I know, and I'm trying to explain though
So-
that there's another grammatical way of representing what you're saying, and I'm gonna make, and this goes to your sentences too. So take your sentences. You're trying to say something like the word game or over, right? So this is why I say it's tricky, because it's more like the sentence itself.
Wait, just to be clear, it's stipulated. If there's confusion in the chat, it was stipulated in hypothetical that they knew it would be trans.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's stipulated that, yeah. So my whole argument would be, again, that why, by the way, again, I made this point too, which is that these pro-trans people, right? You're right. Wouldn't they want to make the best argument they can make for their view would be to just use the word will? Because if they just use the word will, that would actually defeat my hypothesis, right? Like that would.
I don't think they're using words will versus is for the purpose of defeating or supporting your hypothesis. I think they're just used to a certain language and they want to convey certain things by the is. So they want to. There's a number of considerations that they would have by using is, and I think they would say is. And one is, it's not the only future. It's they also want to say that there's something about this individual, this person, that they're being true to themselves. They were this way all along. They were really this. They found themselves. This is their right gender. They probably have that consideration also. That's another reason they wanted to say.
The problem is I cannot. It's starting to not. The concept's starting to like just start sounding incoherent almost to me, because.
Well, I don't think it was that anything I said was incoherent. I think there are multiple concerns and multiple concepts that they're thinking of.
Currently, as a fetus, you already granted that they don't match the definitions that these people, whatever pro-trans definition, right? In the present, you know what I mean? Like obviously in the future, obviously. Right?
No, it's not. No, if the definition is, wait, no. If the concept is already future oriented, baked into the definition, then it does match it.
No, but then when they talk about the past, it's not future oriented, right?
They could use it in a different.
So
they could use it non-univocally. They could.
I know. That's the whole.
The game is over. The game is over. 20 minutes before the game is over refers to the future. The game is over. Right when the game is over refers to the present. Even though they use the same thing. Like tenses, the tense doesn't have to be univocal.
Even if I granted this, right? The cases you're bringing up, right? The reason we know that, right, is because we know that literally the game isn't over, right? Do you see my point? Like that's why.
When you say literally the game, when you say literally the game isn't over, is that just to say that it's not the literal sense is the sense in which it is the present and the time runs out to zero? If that's the case, then no, it's not. It's not. But if what we mean,
that's
because they mean something.
Yeah, I know they mean something different, right?
Else.
But
and they mean something.
That's not my argument. But that was my argument, right? So just my claim was just simply that you would agree that given that that definition, obviously you know what I mean. I mean you have to spell it out, right? Yeah, literally, as in it's not currently time doesn't equal zero at this current moment, right? The game, right? At this moment, the reason why you know that this usage can't be correct, right? The reason why you know that is because you know, and this is the same thing with the marriage example, right? So this is the principle I'm trying to explain to you, and I think this is getting at the heart of the issue, is the examples you're giving, only reason I would even interpret them the way you're talking about, right? What I would call non-literally or whatever but I want to, is precisely because I have facts currently that exclude my usage, right? So, right? But in general, in English, my whole point is when you don't have those facts, right? Right? Generally, you interpret it literally, right? Because you need a very specific set of circumstances for those cases to occur.
So just
right?
so there's certain contexts where I hate using the word literally because I prefer to just replace one thing that was. Because there's always going to be a sense of word of It's fine. I could use the word literally, but there's an issue with the assumption that certain senses are the literal one, and every other sense is metaphorical with respect to that one, or something like that. But anyway, okay, it's fine. Look, I'm trying to understand what point you're trying to make now. Because here's where I'm at. I'm at the point where it seems like when people say something, they sometimes refer to it in one way, sometimes refer to another way, sometimes use the word is to refer to present, mostly. Sometimes use is to refer to the future.
So you agree it's mostly used is, and the examples you're giving are the reason. There's like two assumptions that are required to read those as not being in the present, right? One is in the present. It's first of all, it's actually just one point, right? Well, maybe yeah. It's the fact that we know that the speaker himself knows that I'm using quote unquote literal, right? Yeah, quote unquote. That's if you want the quote unquote literal.
Yeah, but that's just to say the speaker knows that it's not being used in this sense.
No,
I don't attribute anything like magical to the literal, whatever the literal sense.
I'm not attributing that.
Yeah, I know. It's just or anything special or it's like the correct sense or whatever. But I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying that.
So you.
That's just to say that it's that there are certain cases where because of certain social cues or because of certain contexts, it seems pretty well understood. There's a common understanding where if they use it in that way, they're not talking about that sense. That's fine. I grant that.
Here's my argument more specifically, right? If those conditions aren't made, right, then there's just going to be a blatant, like in English, right? If I use the present, right, again, unless those contexts are clear, right, most people are going to interpret you as being the present, right? I mean, there has to be, right? Or else, why even have tenses in general?
Look,
right?
by the way, just so you know, when most people, I wouldn't rely so heavily on this assumption. By the way, when most people use the word literally, do you think they mean literally?
Maybe not, but that's not my
no,
point.
but yes, I'm just So
okay,
what is your point?
Okay, my point is the grammar of tenses, right? Right. I don't know. I mean, they're there for a reason, right? That's the whole point, right? So you look at the goal of speaking is to convey your information to the other person, right? Right. That's just right. Why, right? So if we can, I'm not denying. Okay, let's just say we can use the future. Okay, the point I'm making, the whole point is, right? In the case you're giving, right, are cases where we can, because of other background knowledge, we can reasonably infer he's not using the present, even though, right?
There are certain contexts, there are certain social cues, there are certain background contexts we can.
Right. But obviously, you can't. In most contexts, if you use the word is, it must. You're gonna think he's using the present tense, right? Right. Obviously, if I did this to you, if I said to you, I went to the store, and then you say to me, and then you say, oh, well, like, where's the groceries, right? And I say, oh, by went, I just meant will. I meant the future tense, right? Like, it's obviously ridiculous, right? That's cool. Like, you got to admit, like, that's what I'm trying. I don't know how to explain.
Yeah, but there's this. No. So look. Maybe I understand that in various
so what's
things.
the pushback then? Because if you agree that, and you agree that this is not those cases where you have information to know it's not the present, right?
Then at least in most of the senses, the present. So, for example, what were the examples you gave? Just real quick, repeat them.
Sorry, the example I just gave of the store.
Yeah, go. See when you use the word is. Yeah.
No, the word is. No, so I said something like if I say to you, I went to the store, and then you say to me, well, where's the grocery? And I said to you, oh, well, I meant will. I meant in the future. You're gonna obviously say that's ridiculous, right? Like,
I think when people say that, but it doesn't mean that. Well, yeah. So there are certain contexts where it's less likely. And there are certain switches of tense that's less likely. But I don't see how that's following that in this case.
Because I'm trying to. Okay, the tenses. You have to grant that the word, if you use the word is, most of the time you mean the present. I mean, if you don't agree with that,
I suspect so. No, I suspect yes. Okay, yes, I agree with that.
Okay, great. So
what's under contention is that, or at least in a mostly present sense. But the contention is, but there's a stronger claim you're making here. So if you were to just say,
that's why
most of it. Wait, hold on 1 second. If you were to just listen. If you were to just say that, and you could make an inference that, look, for the overall most part, it's present oriented when the word is used, and so for the most part, what's meaning here is something about the present sense of some sort of present aspects of boy, being a boy, is being used. But you want to make a stronger. It seems like you want to make a stronger claim. You want to say that nothing of the consideration here is a future social role. Nothing. It's all present. It's all biological, and from that, it's not clear to me that's going to be a good case for that.
No. The argument I'm making. Remember, the conclusion I even put was what was. Let me just read it. My conclusion, so you get clear.
Only it was in the conclusion.
I'm pretty sure I used the word probable. Yeah, it is more probable, right? So my claim is
more probable than when someone says to the boy they are referring only.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
They are only referring to the biological.
Yeah. Because
that means 100% of the meaning is biological, like 0%.
Yeah. I agree. So my claim is that most of the time, right? My claim is most of the time when you use the word "is," in the examples you gave, I feel like, again, I already.
Oh, you mean 100? It has it. Oh, so if you're going to make a stronger claim like that, if most of the time when you use the word "is," it's all of the everything that's being picked out there is 100% about the present and 0% about the future, then I'm not going to grant that most of the time that's the case.
Okay, so
the vast majority probably is, but I'm not going to. If you're going to go 0, 100, I'm not going to grant that.
Okay, I don't know what you mean. Okay, when you say 0, 100, probably which part are you saying? So I'm just saying something like when I say it is right a boy, right? Most of the time, I can reasonably infer that the thing I'm talking about, the current like the literal, like I don't know, like I'm just not the future properties, but the current properties of the thing, right? So if I say if I say Avi is,
yeah, I understand. I think I clear. So do you let's just do it like this. Do you think that when someone says this is that they're picking out something in their mind, they're picking out some concept, and a whole bunch of those of that concept is about how things currently are, but some of that is about how things will be? Or do you think 100% of that is about how things are, and like 0% is about how things will be? What a person has in their mind. It's not like about what makes it true and grammatically. Like what the person's picking out in their mind.
Yeah. What I'm saying is when you say
wait, just answer the question, please. Just answer it. Just like let's but it helps. Okay, I'll give you here's something that may help. When you answer a question, just as a point of process, when you answer a question, just start with the answer and then go to the elaboration. Like don't start with the elaboration and then come to the answer.
Repeat the question one more time then.
Yeah. So in general, when someone uses when someone says this is that, whatever it is that's in their mind, not as a matter of like how we structure the rules of grammar, whatever it is that's in their mind, whatever concepts they're picking out, do you think the overwhelming majority are going to be present tense and a minority, even if a small minority, are going to be future tense? Or do you think that all, like 100%, are going to be concepts about the present and there's not going to be any concepts that a person's picking out in their future when they use the word is?
Can I ask you a clarifying question, or do you want me to answer?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, let's call it. Let's say X is P. Right? So are you saying that Are you saying when you say 100%? My claim is that the concept P, right? Yeah, is. Yeah, that concept is 100% present most of the time. Yeah, like that's my claim. Yeah, like that's.
100% present most of the. I'm not sure how this is answering my question. You are going to ask, and I'm not sure if you've even asked me a clarifying question. You wanted to ask me a clarifying
question? Can I just give an example? I think that will make it really clear. Like if I say you are 5 foot, I'm not, whatever, you're 180 centimeters, okay, right? I'm not talking like nothing about my concept, right? I think again in this case I think it's very clear. 180 centimeters is a measurement. That concept has no tense. Then when I use the present, it's just applying to now, strictly now, right? So there could be correlations about the future that follows from that. Maybe I don't know. Like maybe
I'm just talking about the concepts that people have in their mind. You seem to keep going back to like some sort of like as if there's some sort of fact of the matter out there or something or rules of grammar or something. Okay. Then what is the answer to my question? Like, what do you think people have in their mind? Because the point is, because the linearity is still with me, by the way. That's why I'm continuing in natural language, because I still have the point in me. the point I'm trying to get back to is just whether I'm going to grant the inference, and the part of the inference I'm going to grant is whether that when someone says is, the majority of the time they're referring to the present. If that means 100% of the concepts about the present, then I'm not going to grant it.
Yeah, I
If
think
it means the vast majority of the
I
things
think
that people are figuring out,
because 100%.
okay, well then I don't. Okay, well then I don't grant it. Then
Okay,
I need an
so-
argument for that.
Okay, I'll give you the argument. Okay, because nouns. Okay, most of the time.
Wait, so then we're going to get to the conclusion then. Okay, so the conclusion is when
Oh, brother.
when someone uses the term, when people use the term is, in reference to something else, the concepts they have in their mind are 100% about the present and 0% about the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm not granting.
Okay,
And
great.
that's what I'd like an argument for.
Okay, so let's start with the premise. Do you agree with this premise? The premise that nouns generally are not tensed.
In and of themselves? No, like
Yeah, so my example when I said Avi is 180 centimeters, like a measurement, right? Or you can pick anything, right? Red, blue. It doesn't tell you at all.
so what's the first? The first premise are nouns are not tensed.
Nouns are not tensed.
Okay, that's premise one. Is there a second premise?
Premise two. Okay, I guess premise two would be, in these cases, the verb is in the present tense. Right. So that's
Okay, is there a third premise?
let's see. I mean, again, I don't. Yeah. So roughly from those two, the idea would be that it will follow from that then the noun, the predicate. I shouldn't even use. I shouldn't have used the word noun. Actually, that was kind of bad. Can you change the first premise? Just use the word predicate.
What do you need changed?
Yeah, the first premise. Could you change it to predicate, not noun? I think I used the word noun, right? Like the basically, or how about this? Not verbs, or yeah, now or however you want to.
Non-verbs are not tensed.
Or just put predicate. Just put predicate. Just put predicate. Predicates generally are not tense. Just put predicates. I think that's a good way of doing it. Just say predicates are not tense. Generally are not tense. Predicates generally are not tense.
Okay, is this the argument?
Yeah. Premise two. In these cases, the verb is in the present. I mean, if you want me to go formal, I can go formal. But like,
Well, the reason, yeah, no, I try to go less formal if I feel like I'm making progress, and I think it's like we're right there and we could just make the jump. But at some point, it's with you, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything. It's just there are some people where I can easily have a non-formal conversation with and understand the inference and what they're making, and we only rarely need to do formal stuff. It's just you're not one of those people. And it's not like a personal thing. It's just like when I'm trying to have a conversation with you, a lot of times, like when I'm trying to be non-formal, it just gets like, and I'm at the point of unclarity, and I don't know what the inference is or how they're connecting.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we would need to just branch it out linearly. Maybe I made a mistake or made an error in saying.
Again, it's fine. I mean, like I said, I mean, I understand. I mean, let me. If you want me to make it formal, I'm gonna have to add a bunch of conditionals. Let me think. You should probably just have to have one.
And by the way, if you want to type it out,
Yeah,
you're free to type it out yourself as well.
I'll try to type it out. Because I'm just gonna combine premise P1 and P2 into a conditional, and then probably that should be enough to get
I have this.
How do you want to put this? Yeah. I think this should be fine. I posted it. I don't know, and then it's gonna follow from modus ponens again. I mean, if you want to write out the whole thing formally, but yeah.
Okay, so the argument is, what's the argument?
If predicates generally are not tense, and in these cases the verb is in the present tense, then at t equals 1, which is the present, it is true that there is some x such that x is p. I don't know why I put where at the end. That's yeah, basically.
Okay, so is what's
Um.
oh we just added that as a third premise. Okay.
Right. And I guess I could just add another. Do you want me to add another conditional? Because I guess I realized.
Well, if you're going to add another conditional to the conclusion, I'm just going to skip to I'm just going to ask for an argument for that because I don't see how that would follow.
Yeah, from the antecedent, because I'm just going to add a conditional from the antecedent.
No, I'm just going to ask if it's like if the whole idea. All right, you could do it. I could wait, but I was all right. Go for it.
No, yeah, we don't. That's what I'm saying. I'd rather not waste time, but yeah, because I just really but it's up to you because I know you guys really want. So like, what do you want me to do? Do you want to just discuss?
Well, I'm just trying to point out that if the idea here is just to say if is to add a fourth premise to just say if these are true, then C follows. I'm just going to ask for an argument for P4. Then I'll ask for an argument for P4 because it's not clear to me that would be.
Okay, then let's just the argument for P4 would be.
Well, then I do want you to write it, or if you can, because then I just to keep track.
Okay, fine. It's just going to be the last part, right? It's just going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll just write it out. This should be pretty easy. Okay, and then I get the conclusion. Yeah, the Troyer.
If at t equals 1, which is the okay, so that's if a t is with the present is true and at some x such as p would be used a term refer to something else constantly have a reminder 100. Oh, do you want to just go with Detroit because Detroit is you want to go with that? If when people say something is in the form of x is p, they generally express something, the truth conditions of which only involve present facts. Wait, but this is what was in contention. Hold on. But that doesn't work. I mean, great. What's the argument for
premise 1?
And for a particular wait, hold on. When a particular well, this is a bit of a different argument than yours. So you can go two ways. We can try to make yours work, or we can go to a Destroyer.
Well, I think even Detroit. I think Detroit is literally just trying to get at what I'm trying to say. Maybe I phrase it. I suspect we're saying.
All right, so let me see. Let's see if we can make. If this is something that X is P, we generally express the form of the truth conditions of which only involve present facts. Then for particular expression of this point, if in the case there's not good reason to attribute a contrary meaning, then that particular sentence probably expresses something, the truth conditions of which only involve present facts. Okay. When people say something in the form of X is P, they generally express something, the truth conditions of which only involve present facts. The unborn child is a boy, is the expression form is X is P. For the expression the unborn child is a boy, there's no good reason to attribute a contrary meaning. Well, actually, so 4 would be contentious, but actually, what's being said here, Destroyer, is that actually 2 may even be contentious as well. It's slightly different from Quick is saying, but the point is that 2 isn't easily being granted either. The point is that, it's the only part involving present facts.
That is the claim I've been making. Maybe I'm
I know, but that's what's not being easily granted. So if it's when people say something X is P, they generally express something in truth conditions of which only involve present facts. The point of contention is that people could be 99% or 99.9% contingent on present facts, or even more realistically, though. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't like the problem is then you wouldn't use the word is, right? Usually.
Well, no, not that's what's in contention. What's in contention is people do use the word is to pick out concepts that are at some level not the present facts, or that are not the present facts. At least some of them, at least some of the concepts. It could be the very no, it's not just that. There's two different. Let's talk.
Exactly.
There's two different things. No. Sometimes they do, and I agree that sometimes they do in the sense that. Let's just be clear. Sometimes they do in the sense that it's overwhelmingly about the future. Like the game is over. That is overwhelmingly about the future. But what I'm saying is something a bit different. I'm not talking about it's overwhelming about the future. I'm saying a minority of concepts they're picking out are about the future, and the majority are about the present. In that case, it still wouldn't be the case that it's only about the present. So what we would want to say, so there are certain things that are concepts where is used where it's overwhelmingly about the present. So there are certain things where it's only about the present, 100% about the present. There are certain things where it's very much about the present, like 99%, 90%. And there are certain things where is used, and that is 50% of.
I'm
50% about the future.
Confused about something. Like this all has to amount to an argument for P3 of the original argument, no?
Yeah, it is, and it will. Yeah, I have a connection from this to that. Yes, I in my mind.
What do you? Okay, I'm confused about that because what Troy gave has a different the conclusion of Troy's argument isn't P3 of the original argument, so we have a kind of break in linearity there.
But we already went. No, okay. So just to reply to Isaac, it's not a break in the linearity because I have in my mind a way to connect this conclusion that Troy has to a conclusion that Quick wants to support.
Is this just replacing the original argument?
No. It's not. It's not. I can build an argument from this conclusion to a weak argument. A weak argument, admittedly, but a weak argument for the conclusion that Quick wanted.
So you think there's a way to bridge from the conclusion of Troy's argument to P3? And you're just willing to grant that there's a bridge there?
No, I'm not willing to grant there's a bridge there. I see a way to. I think there's a way to. They didn't build it. I built it in my head. Yeah, I think there's a way to do it.
It's kind of weird to hop over the mystery bridge and start talking about some other thing that is sort of disjointed.
No, I'm not. It's not a mystery bridge. Like I see the bridge. I can build an argument. I know you don't. I know you don't, but I have it in my mind. It's okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So. Yeah. So Troy, don't go to the don't go to the literal thing. Like we already covered that. That's a whole different. Putting that aside. What's being tasked is. In terms of 2, what's being tasked is. When people are using the word is, they're not just overwhelmingly talking about the present. They're, in the majority of cases, only talking about the present. Like it's only, the concepts they're picking out are only concepts about the present. That's the, I hope that distinction is clear. Is it clear to you, Quick, at least?
Yeah, I understand I think we both understand. I think we're both disagreeing.
Okay.
We understand what you're saying, but Yeah, like I said, the best way I could explain it to you would be if the conditions weren't, let's say that, like, let's say you have certain set of sufficient conditions, right? If they're not fully met in the present, right, then you don't use the present tense. That's the best way I could put it, right? So even if 99% of it is, right, then right? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if you're about to get married, I don't know. If you're like, I don't know, I don't know. I was gonna say bachelor, but like I guess you're married, like a married man or something like right. If you're like, you meet everything except that you're not. I mean, the point is, the problem is that's like two things. It's hard to give like a 99% example, but like the point is, if you're meet almost everything to become married, but you're still not, you still haven't signed the papers or whatever, right? Or I don't know, right? The best way, like, if you're not married, right? That's the whole point, right? Then you wouldn't use the present, right? That's the whole point we're trying to make, right? The best way to, the point being, you use the present if the conditions are currently met, right? Let's say that at least the sufficient conditions are currently met, right?
If I understand that you're saying you use the present if the conditions are currently met, but if the present that is referring to something that is meaning in some way about the future, then plausibility about the future, then the conditions would be met if it's about the future.
But that's a different question, right? Because we're just talking about premise 2, right?
So what we need is so let's build an argument for premise. So then let's have an argument for premise 2 then.
The claim is, okay. Just stick to the clear cut cases, right? That's my whole point. Is forget because we can get to right? Because we're just saying that the claim we're making is that in the clear.
Because if you can build an argument, look, if you have an argument for premise 2 and look, the contentious premise here are going to be 2 and 4. Like, here are the argument. If you can get this, to go through.
So
and if you can get this and premise 4 to go through.
So let me the best way I could try to do
these two premises. If you could, this is 4. Why is it doing that? All right. Okay. Yeah, if you can get these two premises, build out an argument for these two premises, then I think you can make a good case for the conclusion there, and then I think you could build a conclusion to the conclusion of your first argument.
Okay. Yeah. My claim is for premise 2. The best way I could give it to you is just giving you examples, right?
I don't think so. I think you could build out an argument for premise 2.
So I'm not saying I can't. I'm saying the argument that if I build out the argument, it's gonna hinge.
Or you can give data. That's another way of doing it.
Do you get okay? So my point is, if I write the formal argument, the controversial premise of that formal argument will be it's gonna hinge on these cases. That's my point. Because my point is, in most, let me just state the claim I think which is going to be controversial and see where we go from there. What I'm going to claim is that most, if you actually look at most of the present tense cases, right, they're going to satisfy 2, right? That's the claim.
They're going to what?
They're going to satisfy the 2, right? So when people
wait, I know that's just restating, but that's like,
but that's my point. The evidence would just be going through examples, right? Or how else can I give an argument? What other argument?
That would be a very weak form of that. That would be anecdotal. You could do it by a study that has a sort of methodology of sampling the example.
Yeah, I mean, okay, obviously
that would be the sort of thing you'd want to do.
Yeah,
you wouldn't want to just point to if you're talking about if you're going straight into the, because now it's fine if you want to go into empiric territory, that's fine. But then we're going to follow the evidence hierarchy, and we're going to point out that there's going to be very little convincing by that sort of approach.
Sure. Obviously, at this moment, that's what I would have to appeal to. And if you don't find that convincing enough, that's fine. It's totally fine.
And you also want to build. You're also going to want to build your case out for 4 here. That's also a good. You want to.
Yeah. So the argument for 4 has been. I think I gave the argument for 4 already, which would be that again, most of the time, right? Okay.
No. That's a pro tanto consideration for there being that meaning, but then there could be you want to make a case that we shouldn't have any reason to believe or expect.
Well, okay. Good.
Contrary.
Yeah. So the
Yeah,
argument.
because that's gonna be it's gonna be compatible. Look, it could be compatible at most of the time. All right, go ahead. I mean,
Yeah, so most of the time it would be, right? So obvious. Well, the argument would be that, well, like the examples you gave, I already I gave what I believe is the difference, right? So I'm saying that.
no, but
that
that's still not making the case. That's okay. Even if it's
Okay.
true that most of the time, like even if we grant that, if we grant 2, you'd want that. That's not that doesn't 4 doesn't follow from 2.
No, I'm not. I'm not. No, wait. No, two something. Okay, I'm saying my claim is that most of the time when we use the present tense, right? Right. Most of the time when we use the present tense, we mean literally the present. We're not. It's not usually. It's not about the future, right?
Yeah, this is just 2 again. So we're gonna have to make you to formalize it then, because it doesn't seem like you're tracking.
Yeah.
So do you want to build an argument for 2 or 4? I mean, really, you would want both, and you wouldn't want to build the sort of argument that it's like it's just going to be obvious what if you want to at least also try to think ahead. Like at some point of this, like you could that the move you've made so far, it's like very predictable which premise I'm just going to ask for an argument for. I'm going to contend with because it relies on the same sort of move again and again. So if you want to do that, you could. I mean, you can do that, but you should.
Wait. 4 would not. Okay. 4 does not follow from 2. I agree with you. Right.
Right. You want an argument for 4, and you want an argument for 2.
But wait. Well, the word there. Wait. Okay. I guess 4 is saying there's not a good reason, right? So let's put it like this. I mean, it's going to be something like.
So wait. Right. So which one are you? You're building an argument for 4 now? Yes.
Yeah. I'm not formalizing. I'm actually kind of. I mean, this might be we might be hitting the wall. I just want to be clear. For 4. Yeah. So 4 is saying there's not a good reason to attribute the contra meaning, right? Well, again, it's not.
No way. But I'm just going to offer this now, but in the interest of time, because, if you want time to like build out your case, first of all, I think it's good that you're building out a case now. I think it's good you're thinking of an actual conclusion and you're defending it.
Yeah,
I want to say it's not always expected that you're going to be able to build out a full case on the fly. So if you do want time to think about it and go back to the initial conclusion and want to structure an argument and want to build out your supporting arguments, and you don't want to do that on the fly, and you want to rejoin the conversation when you've already prepared and done that, that's an option as well. And that may save both of us time.
I'd like to say something too. Also, like, I can kind of hear you once every time we go a layer deeper into the tree, you will often like groan, which is fair. I understand the frustration. I already kind of talked about that, but you have to see, like, from our perspective, just picture the perspective of another person. Say hypothetically they don't have or want to deliver a counter argument. They're just not convinced of what you're saying. Really what they're doing is just asking over and over again for the inference of the questionable premise. When you lay things out linearly, that does turn into like, okay, well, what's the argument for that premise? And if you lay out something else that they're not convinced of, they'll ask again. And sometimes that's just how arguments terminate. You know, you get a sense that, or you kind of hit a level where you realize there's not something you can appeal to that they actually accept. You have some different kind of starting point or something, and you're not able to ground it out from within their point of view. So I want to kind of encourage not being frustrated by that. That's just like good procedure. And sometimes what happens is just, you know, you go 4 layers deep and you go, okay, I know that I can prove my point from here, but if someone asks me for more layers, I just haven't thought through how to do that. I'm not sure I could do that, right? Surely you agree that's reasonable, Quick.
No, that part's fine, and I don't have an issue with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that is what's going on. Is I suspect we're hitting a wall to some extent because of differing maybe intuitions. I think there's playing some role, though. I do think there is still a chance that with some clarification, I can give you a convincing argument, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm hitting the wall, honestly, in terms of just like it's been how long? I don't know. It's
That's fair.
It's okay.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily mean a loss either. Like you can like sometimes you are ready to argue to a certain level of depth, and then you're like, oh, this dude like is not actually with me on these starting points. If I'm going to talk to someone like this, I need to prepare like 5 levels deeper. And you might not even be motivated to. You might be like, okay, I only want to argue with people who share at least X amount of like epistemic context with me. It's just not worth my energy or something. But I will
Yeah,
say,
it's fine.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're done, I noticed Julian has returned, and maybe now that he's sort of seen a good example of how to like have one of these discussions, if he wants to try again, I don't know if Avi is inclined to humor it or not. He might be.
All right, what do you say, Julian? Are we going to be friends, or are you going to still be mad at me? Julian's requesting to speak.
We're not going to be friends, but I would like the same treatment you gave QBF. I would like the treatment in order to say something
Truce, Julian, truce. Okay, can we make a
it's,
truce?
It's worth noting that we gave Quick the exact same treatment. Quick just was not being insistent on. Don't make me even right now. Right now, you are bringing it on yourself. You don't even detect it. You're being nippy and cutting in, trying to say other things. Quick is patient, and although he sometimes goes off in lots of directions, ultimately plays fair, right? So no, it has been the exact same treatment for everybody, and we're not going to humor a meta discussion about it. If you can't track that, we're just going to leave that on you. I think anyone with a brain can see it. And yeah, I don't know, Avi, how did you want to proceed with him? Was it you asking him a question? Was it him making an argument? I'll be close to the mute button because this guy has, which by the way would also have happened with Quick if Quick were constantly being really frustrating. We'd have gotten to the same level with him, so no difference there. How did you want to proceed with Julian though, Avi?
Julian, I wanted to proceed the same way. I want to know if there is a proposition we disagree on. If there is, if there's a case that Julian wants to make, I would like to hear the case. If it's not clear what the inference is, we could go on to formalization.
So you're trying to get a proposition out of him right now?
Yeah, that we disagree on.
Okay.
That's the first thing to find out, or if there is.
Okay, right. So the first thing is just, is there something in contention between the two of you, Julian? Let me unmute you.
Consider this proposition, the proposition that if what Avi said was true, then he didn't respond to Quick's point in the discussion. Is that a proposition Avi disagrees with?
I don't know. It depends what Quick's point was. It wasn't, because there in that conversation, it wasn't. Quick may have made a point, and it wasn't clear to me. So
so I'll give the point then.
No. I just want to wait. I'm answering. Oh, you give the point, and I'll see if. Okay, what was the point?
So Quick's point was, okay, he asked you, give me an example of, so a clear case in which someone would be heterosexual and nonetheless they'd be
heterosexual to whom?
Like the general uses of heterosexual.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's what was being asked, then what I answered was not an example of that, or at least not clearly. But on my interpretation, it wasn't. I may either have not interpreted him that way or have misheard. Yeah, I either misheard him or didn't interpret it to be that. So it's possible that I'd have to rewatch it, but it's possible that he either didn't say it or I would have had to do interpretive work, or maybe he said it and I didn't hear it.
Okay.
But sure, if that was the intended point that was made, and I didn't pick up on that, or intended thing that was asked of me, and I didn't pick up on that, then I, of course, grant that what I answered with didn't meet that what was asked.
If that is truly your view, then I don't disagree there. I just have one thing to say, is that when I was watching the dispute, it looked pretty clear to me that he was asking about the general usage of the word heterosexual, not your usage, because you've already stated previously in your conversation that you wouldn't exclude people of adult human females from your definition. So I got him to say something like talking about the general definition. of heterosexual.
Oh, I don't even remember if I did say that before or not. Maybe I did. I'd have to go watch it. But I also wouldn't use that as a reliable inference, because sometimes in conversations, clarity is asked all the time. Sometimes in conversations, the fact that I may have said I wouldn't exclude it, he may have still asked me for a clear case. So if he didn't explicitly say it, I don't grant that happening would be like this is some sort of obvious thing that I should just interpreted that he's asking about the general population versus like how I'm using the term.
Okay, I mean, but there's an issue for me is that it was a sense of confusion in your later discussions, though, because
Oh, I agree that the lack of clarity can cause confusion in later discussions, and to the extent that we didn't have clarity, I wish we did.
Okay, so you could see from my perspective as someone who saw that as what Quick was saying, and I thought most people would see that as what Quick was saying, why someone would have an issue with your response.
I'm not. I have to look at it again. I'm not. I don't. I'm not sure. From my perspective, it was very challenging to clear up what Quick was saying, and I'm sure there were some challenge. Maybe there was challenges Quick was having with what I was saying, but it was a struggle for me. I was, and in fact, at some points, it was a struggle for me to figure out the goal. Like, is Quick just trying to ask me questions about my view? Like, is Quick trying to make an argument for a case?
The way it sounds to me is that you don't disagree that if Julian's interpretation was correct about both what Quick said and what you said, that it's not a response to Quick. You're not sure it's as obvious as Julian seems to think it is, that a given interpretation is as obvious as he thinks it is. I don't know if, like, Julian, do you actually care to argue with him about which interpretation is more obvious, or are you kind of happy enough with?
That's not unless he has a different dispute about another point I bring up. I don't care to argue about that. I brought up a point about empirical testing used in philosophy. That's another.
So what's the contention there? Like, what do you think? What proposition do you think I hold to that you think is false?
I mean, see, the problem was it wasn't specifically about you in that point. I don't know if I should have discussed.
So let's ask the question then. Do you think I have a view that you?
I don't know what
you have a propositional dispute about that point.
I don't know what your view is. I was speaking about like Anne's comments about.
Do you think that? Do you think that empiric? Are you trying to say that empirics, that empirical data is just a folly in terms of ordinary language, in terms of how investigations of how people use terms in ordinary language or within subsets of people?
So it depends what terms you're talking about. I think with terms like numbers, like 4 or 5, justice, like these really philosophically fleshed concepts, doing empirical surveys won't really get you anywhere.
Do you think that's because there's just some fundamental inherent problem there, or do you think it's because those sorts of things are just harder to do and harder to control for certain things, and tend to prime people to answer it with respect to one theory in philosophy versus another? But in principle, there is like some methodological way to go about this to deal with those limitations, or do you think it's just like even with the perfect methodology, like you're just not going to get it?
So I mean, it depends on which subset of people you're going to be interviewing. So if we're talking about interviewing, what I said in my comment was the many or the common folk. I think the problem is they know particular instances of like the number 4, but they don't know what the general concept of the number 4 is. So asking them about it is an informative.
Right. But that could be solved. Yeah. So the methodological approach is basically to take these people. So there is a way of doing this, which is basically to give them the concept and to give them the various different concepts, or one way of doing that. But that is more burdensome. It's more costly, more time consuming.
I'm confused. I would just take it. I would like the general concept just is whatever concept people are generally using in all of its shittiness, unless you're talking about the general concept among mathematicians or something and using like lay people as a proxy for what mathematicians mean, in which case, yeah, you'd have to like tell them the concepts or something. Like,
oh, sorry, go on.
Well, are you trying to talk about whatever general concept, assuming there is a single general concept that just exists amongst everybody? Are you trying to talk about amongst mathematicians, or?
So, okay, the best way to explain this is it's not amongst mathematicians, it's amongst everyone using 4. I think people can calculate with 4. They can say there's 4 sheep, they can say there's 4 goats. But my view of what the number 4 is, it's an encoder for the work being done in higher order logic. There's no way that asking around can ever get you to that conclusion. The concept of 4, what it is, does it have ontology? Is it paraphrasing for something more complex, like the work being done in higher order logics? That's the work that needs to be done by philosophers, and you're not going to get that by interviewing people who use the term 4 correctly in their everyday life.
Okay, so that I think, but that is just, that can all be subsumed as a limitation of the methodology that can be accounted for. It's just, it's harder to do that. You can provide them the sort of, so if you're trying to answer the question about if people's usage as an empirical matter just just let me just be very clear. What is the empirical question that you think just cannot be answered by so what is the question that you think cannot be answered by methodology, even if there's extensive work done providing the concepts and whatnot? Like what is
cannot, like, it depends on what the empirical methods are and what do you mean by cannot.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, we'll get to what the empirical methods are. Like, or do you think just will not? We can avoid modal terms, but
So,
like I can. Okay, I'll give you.
Can we just be clear about what the claim is? Can you just say it again, Julian?
Okay, so the claim is stated this way: for deep philosophical concepts like justice, what things are numbers, those are the type of things I don't think maybe interviewing the common folk about their usage, or maybe even interviewing philosophers, this is more controversial, will get to will kind of raise the probability that you're accurately capturing the meaning of the term, or at least it won't raise the probability too significantly.
Okay, I'm kind of confused because, I mean, if you want to know how what people are intending to express, maybe you mean something else by meaning. But if you want to know what people are intending to express, you can, of course, apply empirical methods to do that. But it sounds like you're kind of also talking about engineering or something. It sounds like you're talking about, like, look, we have a bunch of stuff that we want concepts like 4 or justice or whatever to do, and fleshing out what those roles are and building the concept up in the right way to fill that role. That's something for like mathematicians or philosophers or something. So if you're saying something like that, I mean, there's certainly, I mean, that's obviously true. Like, yeah, you don't get to like, you can kind of think of it like there's like an ordinary concept. Let's just, for simplicity's sake, make an assumption that there is an ordinary concept and let's not even dial in the notion. It could be justice, it could be numbers, whatever. Let's just say there's some philosophical term P and there's some ordinary notion of it. I think right. What I'm going to want to say, and Avi's going to probably want to say something similar, is that finding out what people mean when they're expressing that ordinary concept, that is better done through empirical methodologies. You can get, and there's a range of these. You talk about philosophy, neuroscience, psychology, tactics used in experimental.
What type of studies would you be conducting? Like, how can you give me an example?
I'd like to table that for a second to make the point, but you can raise that again. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I worry that going in, firstly, Avi's better at talking about methods for empirical questions in general, so it's something I want to pass to him. Not that I couldn't say anything about it, but also I just feel like I worry the higher order, the big picture point is going to get lost if I go into detail on just focusing on the methodology. So high level, you have some concept P, and it's one of these like heady concepts that you're talking about, And we could talk about the ordinary usage. And I think the kind of thing Avi and I are going to want to say is empirical methods are good for and often better than doing, reflective equilibrium between semantic intuitions for getting at the ordinary notion. But if you want to talk about the engineered notion, and again, we'll just simplify and say there's an engineered notion. We don't need to engineer multiple notions or something. We say there's some role we want the concept to play, and we build the concept in order to play that role. That building is not a task to like do with a study or something. Studies might inform parts of that, like what you want it to do. You might, do empirical work to look at what kinds of things people are trying to do with the concept. But the actual building of the concept, that's something for mathematicians or something for philosophers. So big picture is just you have P, you have the ordinary sense, you have the engineered sense. Investigating the ordinary sense, yes, use empirical methods for that. That's good. That shouldn't just be an armchair task. The engineered notion, yeah, I mean, empirical stuff can still inform aspects of that, but that is heavily a task for philosophy or for mathematics. And before
Right.
you say something,
That's
Julian, I was
yeah.
just going to see if Avi agrees. Yeah.
Yeah, in the engineering, yes, exactly. There's different senses of the notion building. If you're talking about just investigating ordinary usage, there's issues. There's There's always all sorts of limitations. If I can give an example of like a limitation and how one would deal with that, I think the epistemology example would be answered by Julie. Okay.
Before we do that, I don't want to lose track of what Ask Yourself said. I don't think what's going on when philosophers of math are deciding what the concept of the number 2 is in engineering or what it's supposed to do. I think when someone, like I'm referring to a neologicist view, in which numbers, they don't play the role of designating abstract mathematical objects, they play the semantic role of encoding for the work being done in higher order logics. If you want numbers in the way people use them are encoders for the work done in higher order logic. This is just, it's not accessible to most people. It's not accessible to even most philosophers, because most philosophers don't know the work being done in higher order logic. And it's not about what the term for is supposed to do. It's about how it's used and what is its logical role.
I'm a little bit confused there because I'm not sure if you are disagreeing with something that I said. Like, do you disagree with some aspect of what I said?
Well, here's the point. I don't think it's used in the engineering sense, at least for philosophy of math, or the term numbers, whereas one example I gave her wouldn't be helpful. It's not used.
You didn't make a claim about how it's used.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're. You might be thinking there's disagreement where there isn't, because we're not talking about like. I wasn't making some claim about what philosophers are typically doing or something like this. I was just drawing a distinction between two things you could do and talking about what kinds of work would be relevant for doing one or the other task. And I don't know if you disagree with that. Or if you're just trying to make a separate point and see if we disagree with the separate point. But actually, let's go one by one. Do you disagree with some part of what we said?
I mean, I think so, unless I'm not clear on what you were saying. So I think philosophers, you said, like in the example with math I gave or numerals I gave, that it was used in some engineering way where they're trying to say what
can I cut in? It was used. I'm not sure I did say that. I was talking about hypothetically two kinds of questions and what would be the appropriate or optimal way to approach them. So I'm not talking about my statement wasn't about what's going on, what historically has been going on. It's about what would be the best methodology for a given kind of question.
Right, I understand that, but do you think that in the case I was giving, where like people are saying that numbers,
wait a second,
they're
just wait a second, because I'm happy to talk about whatever your thing is, or Avi can or whatever, but let's just be clear if we're moving to another thing, which is fine if you want to. But are you taking issue with some part of what we said? And you don't have to say therefore I assent to it. I'm just trying to understand if you're taking issue with it or not.
Okay, I'll make a proposition and I'll see if you disagree.
No. This is okay. We'll try to not make this Korean into something bad like last time, but this is like a difference in approach of what we're doing. So like, we have a thing that we've put out there. Here's a statement. we're trying to understand if you're objecting to that statement or not.
Well, whether or not, I
You're-
think
you
this
could say you're not
proposition
sure.
isn't terrifying.
You could say
I'm
you're
not sure.
okay. You're not
I'm
sure if
not
you're
sure
objecting to what
if
I said. Let me just make sure I understand you. You're not sure if you're objecting or not to what I said, but you have some other proposition and you want to see if we object to it.
I think it's relevant to what you said before, and I want to see if you object to it.
Okay, but that's slightly. We need to talk about the meta. Do you understand why this could be a bit frustrating from my perspective? Because like you're not quite addressing what I say. You're like, I see how it's relevant and I want to talk about it, but I didn't ask, is it
I'm
relevant?
trying to address what you say, though.
Well, what? Okay,
Like,
well, then stop right there. What do you think that I asked then?
Well, can I try and paraphrase what you said, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking what do you think I said, and then where I want to go from there is understanding if you're objecting to it or saying some other point.
Okay, so I think you said something along the lines of, if they're using it as a conditional, if they're using it in the engineering sense, then that's just not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in understanding the concept, and I think the good way to do that is empirical investigation and not the armchair kind of investigation.
I don't think that's what I said. I'm not really recognizing
Oh,
what I said.
I don't
in
know.
that.
I think
Also,
he.
when I talked about what I said, I actually was talking about the question I asked after that, not the original statement. But that's fine. So yeah, just to be clear, this is what it looks like to me right now, Julian. It looks like you're not sure if you object to the general statement that I made with P and engineering and ordinary concepts, but you have some further sentence and you want to see if we disagree with that. Is that correct?
I think that's right.
Okay,
So,
sure.
So I want to say the best way, at least for numbers, I'm using this as an example, is not to do empirical investigation. Is that something we disagree with?
I don't think it's well. Do you want to?
We need more clarity in that question. The best the best way to do to what numbers to get the ordinary
Okay, yeah. So let me be very clear. The best way to understand the concept of numbers, not whether someone knows the right way to apply for or knows how to do addition, to understand what for is not to do empirical investigation, but to do the armchair philosophy.
Okay, but so the reason I introduced that original comment with like P and with engineering and with ordinary concepts was because there's different concepts we might be trying to understand. So when you say right now, the best way to understand for, I don't know if you're talking about the engineered notion of for or the ordinary notion of for or the ordinary notion of for among some subset of the population. This is kind of the whole, like this is like a major point for us is
Can I ask a couple questions on what you said previously?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was trying to understand what notion you were talking about, so I could answer your question. Because just so we don't lose track, because you asked us, you wanted to know if we agree that the best way to get at the concept of for is I forget exactly what you said, but basically through philosophical methodology, not through empirical.
Right.
Work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm saying the thing I introduced is you have to. It's a disambiguator for sentences like that question you just asked us. When you say the notion of for, what notion of for? The engineered notion, the ordinary notion among some subset of the population?
Yeah, no, it's not the ordinary notion among some subset of the population. It's the usage among most people when they're applying the predicate for to something. They say for sheep, for cattle, 27 yards of land. You get the concept.
Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I misunderstood, or you misspoke. But you said it's not the ordinary notion. But then what you just described is what I take an ordinary notion to be. Like you just said,
it's not the ordinary. Not the notion among a subset of people. It's the ordinary notion. It is the ordinary notion.
Yeah, maybe maybe what I said didn't come across clearly, but I said you might talk about the ordinary notion. Again, that you have to make an assumption there is an ordinary notion, or you might care about the ordinary notion among some subset of the population. But I did give the option of just caring about some general sense of
general sense.
Yeah, and of course we already flagged and tabled this. There might not be a general sense, as you can have a term that's polysemous or that has even at the most general level, 2 senses or something like that, like
Right, yeah.
bank, to take the classic example. So yeah, you're talking about, we're making assumption there's an ordinary notion, and you're saying the best way to understand the ordinary notion is through philosophical methods.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I don't agree with that. I'm not sure where Avi sits, but to be clear, the part I will agree with is, and I feel like there just might be a little hang up here. When you talk about the kind of stuff logicians, you talk about like, what, I forget how you said it, like higher order math or logic, like you're talking about the way that concept gets used technically. That notion, I mean, I'm kind of moving to,
No.
yeah, because that I think is all for, like, that's basically building the concept to fit the fucking purposes we need it for in math. And like, obviously mathematicians are going to be better poised. Like, obviously the way to get that notion is for mathematicians to look at the fucking problems they're trying to deal with and be like, oh, we need imaginary numbers for this. Oh, we need whatever for this. Not to go like, oh, what does an ordinary person think about this thing they have no fucking idea about? So I almost feel like, just one sec, I almost feel like there might be a bit of confusion, because we're going to grant basically the whole thing you're saying about engineered notions, but with ordinary notions we're not. We're going to say, well, that's just a matter of like the psychology and the way people are speak, like that's just some thing for empirical investigation, finding out what the average person is talking about. You do that with like, well, we can talk about empirical methods, but yeah.
Okay, so what logicians are doing in the philosophy of math is they're trying to explain what speakers are doing. They're saying that speakers are compressing, using first order resources like numbers in the object place in a first order language to speak about higher order cardinality quantifiers, which are type 1, and for quantification over them you need to go to second order logic. So if this is true, they are explaining everyday usage of the term 1, 2. It's speakers effectively using their first order resources to express something higher order in nature that they can't express, in the first order language.
I think there might be just a little bit of us not meeting at the same place here, because I agree with part of what you're saying. Like, look, the empirical work is to collect like how are people using this thing? What exactly, what in what context do they use it? What's their psychology when they use it, etc. Pardon me? Sorry?
I said, I was saying, wasn't acknowledging what you were saying.
Got you, yeah. But then obviously you aren't gonna, through some empirical study, like you collect all this information, when you then have all those data points about usage, which you collect empirically, you don't then somehow just magically from that empirical collection get the ideal notion or get the concept that they must be using to do those things. You'd bring in someone with domain expertise to like look at all the data points we collected and be like, what concept fits all these data points? They'd be like, oh, it could be a logic of such and such structure, and then it's like, oh, that matches the empirical data we collected. Sorry, that's kind of loose language. That notion could explain what people are doing. That notion explains all of these empirical data points that we collected. They're all predicted on the assumption that people are using that notion. So you see the two different parts I'm teasing out. The part about collecting how people are speaking, what they're thinking when they speak it, that's all ultimately like neuroscience, psychology, experimental philosophy. Did I say neuroscience? Like, that's stuff about people's brain and about culture, and it's just a bunch of empirical data collecting. But we have all the data points. What's the concept that fits all these or would predict all these? That's philosophy. That's for philosophy, or I guess maybe it could be for mathematicians. So I don't know if you disagree when I split up the task like that.
I think that well, in my comment, you're partially hinting at what's in my comment. Is I said that the common folk knows the particular instances, the way they use the number 4 in everyday language, but it's philosopher's job to get the concept. So that part we agree on. There's a second part of it. Do we need to do the empirical investigation, or do we already have the data at hand in our armchair?
to get the concept, I mean, just to be clear, when you say to get the concept, you mean assuming we have a bunch of data points about usage to find the concept that would predict all those data points, basically.
I think that's correct. So like you would abstract all the instances, Socrates' example of the beauty to get the beautiful, the concept of the beautiful, something like that.
I don't know about the language of abstract. I just mean you have a bunch of data points, like this term is used in this way. This person has this brain state when they use the term. This person, if presented this hypothetical, says this thing about the term or something. You have a bunch of data points, and then the idea is there's this task of finding the notion, which, if we assume people are using it, would predict all of those data points. Predict as in, if we make the assumption that this notion is being used, we would predict that they would speak in the way that we observed.
Okay, that sounds fine. In the sense, maybe you'd give a definition for concept.
Yeah.
And that would explain the common usage.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something along the lines of
okay,
the philosopher would come up with a definition.
Yes, right, exactly. But and then to your question, you asked, okay, well, do we need to do the empirical stuff? And the question is, it really is just going to depend on how muddy it is. Like, you know, there might be, let's just hypothetically say there's some case where, for whatever reason, ordinary usage is just completely uncontroversial. No one disagrees about it. Do we need to go do a fucking study? I mean, probably not. Maybe it's not going to be useful. Maybe we'd get barely anything out of that. But then there's other cases where language is really fucking messy, and we might not want to just jump into the philosophical side of things, because we might think, okay, we have like a really shitty selection of data points, and if we explain these, maybe, you know, it's these data points aren't actually a representative sample, so we'd want to like improve our collection or something like that before doing the philosophical work. And then that's where you get into talking about applying empirical methodologies. So the answer to your question is basically it depends. And the thing it depends on is more or less like how murky the language usage is.
Yeah, well, so I never make the claim that experimental philosophy can never be useful. So I agree that it depends on the context in which you're using it. But certain situations, I'm unsure it will be helpful. Maybe the only disagreement we would have is in the circumstance in which Avi and Anne were talking about, it'd be super helpful, or the circumstance about numbers, it'd be super
That's
helpful.
where I'll pass it back to Avi. But I think we broad strokes agree then. Now we're just talking about this particular case, if it's one of the murky cases where it's reasonable to want more empirical work or not. But we're not disagreeing about, basically, we're not disagreeing at a high level about the procedure.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Okay,
so wait, I just missed. Did you say with the word we were using when in that video that it would be or would not be helpful? Because I know you said something about numbers, but we weren't talking about numbers.
Right. So here's the thing. It might be a little bit suggestive, but certainly not enough for me to significantly care about and not go off the armchair philosophy.
Okay, so wait. You're talking about numbers, or you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the conversation you had.
Okay. Yeah, and just to be clear, we also don't want to get baited into the trap of making expect the data to do more than what it needs to. So if one wants to make the claim that, so there's a strong claim the hypothesis can make is like, this is like the only usage, or this is the most common usage or the sense of the word, or what people mean when they say that. But a weaker claim, which is just as fine to make the point from the other night, is that maybe it's not the most common usage, but it's within the literary repertoire of senses of a notion. So, for example, let's say I designed a survey, talking about methodology, where we ask a number of participants, is the word pig, that word, does it refer to a swine or does it refer to a human? And let's say everyone thinks about it and just answer, and you get 100%. They answer, oh, well, obviously it's a swine. Is that going to be good evidence? So 100% people answer to that question is it's a swine. Is that going to be good evidence that the ordinary usage of the term pig
most commonly refers to swine.
Wait, so you're saying 99% of people say it's a swine?
Yeah, let's say really even 100.
If 100% of people say it's a swine, then that's going to serve as evidence that it's a swine.
Is it going to be? Well, isn't it? No. But is it going to be good evidence that when people use the term, the most common thing they're referring to when they use the word pig is swine, is a swine? And I actually think with the background knowledge we have, the answer is no, it's not. Because if you think about it, most people, you could totally see most people answering that yes, that it's a swine, or even 100% of people. But if you think about it, how does the word pig used? It's almost always used in ordinary language to refer to people.
Maybe I'm not getting the point.
Look at those pigs in reference to cops. Look how much weight she gained. She's a pig. It's just that the methodology of the question itself primed the respondents to answer the question with respect to a given sense in the first place. And so that was an error in methodology if you were trying to do that. And so you'd have to design a methodology to not prime that way. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought you were saying, like, okay, are they deliberating over whether the predicate, like swine, applies to something? That's a swine. The predicate swine applies to something. That's weird, because I think that is good evidence. People are generally good at picking out particulars which fit a predicate. They're not good at.
Well, the question is just: is a pig a swine or a human?
Oh, that's the question. So it's a binary question.
Is it pig?
Neither options are good.
Is a pig a swine or is it a human? Or you could say, look, the point I'm just making here is that a question can prime someone to answer the question in a given sense that they normally wouldn't.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
So that sort of thing would be a methodological issue. Now, but even with the certain limitations, there are certain weaker hypotheses that can still be good evidence for. So, for example, if I ask the question, "Is a pig a swine or a human?" and 100% answer a pig is a swine, it may not be good evidence that the ordinary usage is that of a swine, because I've already my methodology has already primed them to answer it in the sense of the word swine. Whereas in normal language, they would not use it in that sense. However, what it is still good evidence for is a weaker hypothesis, that it's in their literary repertoire, that within the appropriate context, they would use the word pig in that sense. And if you did put them on a farm and you asked them what that animal is, they would say, oh, it's a pig. So it's good evidence for that weaker hypothesis. So there are limitations with these methodologies that may be problems for stronger hypotheses. But one approach would be to weaken the hypothesis and say, even with these limitations, it's still good evidence that, at minimum, it's in the literary repertoire.
Okay.
And so that's all what's really needed for that word woman.
Well, because I thought it was... Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, because the point really wasn't what's the most common usage of the word woman. It's just whether there is another sense of the word woman that is meaningfully in a substantial amount of people's repertoire. That given the appropriate context, they would be inclined to use it in that sense. And so that sort of data is good evidence for that.
Okay, but as I construed, I don't disagree with that, first of all. As I construed the debate, it seemed to be over common usage of the word woman at some point.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. So common usage of the word woman, we pulled the data, and even the data suggested that the most common usage of the word woman is adult, human, female.
Right. Yeah. So
I'm definitely not making the claim that it's the. So I wasn't trying to make the claim that it's the most common usage is. I don't make a claim about what the most common usage is.
Yeah, I think, though, it's ridiculous to say something like no one has a concept of social woman. I mean, that's obviously clear to me.
Right.
True.
It's in a meaningful look, just like people have a concept of a social parent. They have a concept of, when they talk about parents, they most often are thinking about a biological parent, but they have the concept of a parent as in a non-biologic parent is within their literary repertoire. It's a meaningful concept.
But I mean, Anne asked somewhere in the dispute for Quick to provide some empirical evidence that people use the term this way. And that's where I
think that was in. I don't think that was in my video. I think that was in the in the prior video that we were discussing.
Okay, but so maybe you don't disagree with this. I mean, the point three wasn't directed at you, so I mean.
Well, I just want to be. I just want. I think it's worth getting clarity on point three, because point three, the limitations of the methodologies of forming these hypotheses, the issue of women as a social role doesn't need to be framed as a hypothesis about that being the most common usage. It's much weaker than that. All it really needs to be is a substantial enough of a sense of the term in people's literary repertoire that it's worthy of a mention in the dictionary as a different sense.
Yeah,
Doesn't have to. It could be, something like that.
But yeah, I mean, such a thing I feel would trivialize the dispute. But I mean, what else I say?
Well, I don't even know if it would. Maybe it would, but some people would say no. It has to be unique. Like, it depends who you ask. But that's really all that's needed for the point. For the point to go through. It's just that that trans.
Well, of course, unless you claim that it's the most common usage is a social one, right? Then.
Well, then you have a higher burden, of course. But I wouldn't claim that the most common usage is a non-biological one, just like a most common usage is of a parent. I mean, well, it's more clear in parents, but I think in the case of parents, it's most common usage. They think of some sort of biological parent, but we still have in the literary repertoire, we still have a non-biologic parent, a step parent, and the point is that even though that is a strong minority of parents, and it's a minority in the usage of the term, we still see that as prevalent enough and meaningful enough that we accept step parents as parents in the social role. And I think that's really the analogy with trans women. With trans women, I'm not making the claim that when people say woman, I have some case to make that it's the ordinary language usage is the most commonly refers to a non-biologic sense. Like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just saying, to whatever degree step parents as non-biologic parents are meaningfully in the literary repertoire, so are women in a social sense.
Yeah, I don't know if I said anything that disagreed with that.
No, that's just to clarify. But the point is that for that hypothesis, I think it's a lot easier to bring evidence for that because it's a weaker hypothesis. The limitations aren't as impactful. I'm not saying you said anything to disagree with that. I just want to be clear, because I take some people take what you said, what you would say like that, and be like, oh yeah, there's all these problems with the empirics, and they just are they're just making fun of these armchair philosophers. They're saying the philosophers there's no role for them. Of course there's a role for them, and of course there's a role for the empirics, and it all depends on what's the strength of the methodology, strength of the hypothesis, etc. So to put all that, so I don't think we disagree on that either. And the point being is just that, for the purposes of the conversation that other night, that's real. The evidence really is, in my view, good for it. But it is just a weaker hypothesis, but that's all that's needed.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
All right, very good.
Unless you have
points. Wait, do you think I'm Jewish?
You can be 25%. I mean, I'm not
25%, maybe.
Okay, wait. You're a doctor, right? Okay, you're Jewish.
Yeah. Oh, okay. There we go. I'm a doctor, so I'm Jewish. All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up. Have a good one, everyone.